Welcome to Novel Love Hearing. We bring you hundreds of novel audiobooks covering every genre and every kind of story you can imagine. Action? We've got it. Adventure? Absolutely. Horror? Of course. Whether it's the legendary Uchiha Massacre or outrageous tales like stealing Naruto's and Sasuke's women, you'll find it here. From epic series like One Piece, Bleach, Fairy Tail, and Hunter x Hunter, to countless other adventures, our library has it all. Love novels but don't have time to read? No worries, just plug in your earbuds, sit back, and let the story take over. Good listening, and happy hearing. It became easy to counter or neutralize it. That's why most Shinigami avoided showing their releases publicly, even among comrades. But now Aizen. Someone they had known for less than a day. Was willing to openly demonstrate his shikai for the sake of others, risking exposure without hesitation. No benefit. No conditions. Not for glory or favor. Simply so others could learn. Yes. Aizen smiled slightly, his voice as composed as ever. My Zanpakuto belongs to the water type. It uses mist and reflections to distort the senses, confuse the enemy, and make them turn on each other. Would you like to see my shikai? There was no arrogance in his voice. He spoke gently, with poise. It was the calm, composed tone of a true gentleman. Shioi Nyoruichi, how honest. What a refined, humble gentleman. Hurrah Harakisuke, a perfect balance of power and character. I can't compare to him. Byakuya Kuichiki, it's unfortunate such a man isn't of noble blood. Honest, generous, and upright. Shiba Ishin, out of all the people I've met, none are as magnanimous as Aizen. Aizen silently lowered his head and propped it with one hand, fingers covering his eyes. He didn't speak. He was afraid that if he didn't hide his face, people like Hurrah Harakisuke or Shiba Ishin. Who acted carefree but were actually extremely sharp. Might notice the look in his eyes. The look of someone trying not to laugh. Because, seriously. Kyoka Suigetsu Shikai, on full display, and these people were falling over themselves to see it? Are they brain dead? His dear little brother had just stepped onto the stage to perform, and as his proud elder sibling, Aizen chose not to interrupt the show. Let the fool dance. We would like that very much. Aizen, thank you for your generosity. If you ever need help, just ask. Kame Morisugen will be there. Same for me. Adadama Gai Shujuk. Others nodded in agreement, touched by Aizen's sincerity. Even Tosen Kaname, though blind, joined the group. He couldn't see the shikai visually, but with spiritual pressure perception, he could still sense and interpret its release. And it wasn't just them. Even seasoned Shinigami like Byakuya, Yoruichi, and Hurrah Hara, who had long achieved their own shikai, were paying close attention. After all, a glimpse of the shikai of a rare genius who only appeared once in a century? Who could resist? Even if Aizen had already explained its ability. And even if what he said probably wasn't the complete truth. They were still curious. It wasn't about logic anymore. Everyone just wanted to watch the show. Just one look at Kyoka Suigetsu, and you'll be a puppet for life. Aizen shook his head silently. Ahem. Listen up, all of you. Shiba Ishin cleared his throat, then suddenly became stern. You are all here today by Aizen's grace. So you must treat this moment seriously. After seeing this, don't just feel grateful. Seal your lips. Don't breathe a word about Aizen's Zanpakuto shikai to anyone outside this room. Yes, Instructor Ishin. Everyone straightened up immediately, their tones and postures serious. Don't be so formal, Aizen said with a light smile. We're classmates now. Soon, we'll be colleagues. Maybe even comrades on the battlefield. So what if my shikai is seen? Don't worry about it. In fact, I'm planning to show it to the other classes at the Shino Academy as well. Huh? Everyone froze. He wanted everyone at the academy to see his shikai? Most Shinigami would rather die than let others see their release. Some would even kill witnesses just to protect their secret. But Aizen? He was actively going around displaying his Zanpakuto like a public demonstration. Why? Someone asked. Aizen adjusted his glasses slightly, then said in a quiet voice, in the other classes. Most students are average in talent. Compared to all of you, it's like comparing starlight to the full moon. It's different if you're born noble. But most of them come from Rakongai, like me. I know how hard it is for someone without a background to walk this path. Every step forward is 100 times harder for them than it is for the noble born. That's why I want to do what I can. If watching my shikai even helps one of them understand Zanpakuto better, it's worth it. He looked up again, voice calm but passionate. After I graduate, if I manage to rise within the 13th Division of Imperial Guards, I'll work toward becoming a lecturer at the academy. So that every student. No matter where they come from. Can see my shikai and believe they can succeed. If by doing that, I can help Siri I gain more Shinigami. Then what is there to fear in others knowing my Shikai's power? Compared to that goal, a mere Shikai is nothing worth hiding. For a moment, even the talkative Urahara was silent. Shiba Ishin looked at Aizen with deep respect. Aizen remained quiet. Watching his little brother playing the part of the Saint of Soul Society, he could already imagine the expressions of those who saw Kyoka Suigetsu's true ability in the future. Shock. Horror. Betrayal. So that's why the visored captains hated Aizen so deeply later on. That's why Urahara. Who had once respected Aizen. Went so far as to build countless Gedo traps and conspiracy layers just to kill him. Turns out, Aizen's biggest crime wasn't stabbing them in the back. It was acting too perfect from the very beginning. So perfect it was criminal. Aizen, you're not going to watch? Yoruichi asked curiously, noticing he still had his head down, hand over his eyes. Shikai isn't something you can just watch once and gain something from, he replied without lifting his head. Let's leave it to the people who need it. Besides, Aizen has another goal. He wants to surpass me. I won't take advantage of him. A man doesn't have to be great, but he must not be petty. Aizen waved dismissively, still shielding his eyes. Yoruichi looked at him for a long moment, then smiled faintly. You and Aizen. You really are brothers. Compared to the nobles in Siri Itai, the two of you are far more noble in spirit. If there were more Shinigami like you in the noble families, maybe Soul Society wouldn't be the way it is now. Even Byakuya Kuachiki, who had once been humiliated by Aizen in public and viewed him as a disgrace to noble bloodlines, glanced over with new respect in his eyes. Chapter 22, But now. Aizen too? Although Aizen had previously criticized the Kuachiki family without holding back, Byakuya Kuachiki had to admit he was still a righteous man. Before our duel ended, he didn't injure me further, nor did he humiliate me. Come to think of it, I was the one who picked the fight on purpose under my grandfather's instructions. Recalling the confrontation with Aizen, Byakuya no longer felt that same discomfort. He didn't regret the fight, but at least his heart had settled. Still, the defeat could not be left unaddressed. As someone who had never been defeated before. And as a noble of the Kuachiki family. He couldn't simply walk away from the loss. Aizen noticed Shiyu and Yoruichi glancing between him and Byakuya and then sensed the shift in Byakuya's gaze. But he said nothing. What could he say? Go stand next to Yoruichi and Byakuya to watch Kyoka Suigetsu Shikai? Even if he knew how to counter it. Even if he was confident that his own Zanpakuto could resist complete hypnosis. Why go through the trouble? This kind of thing was best left to the crowd. Let them enjoy their little show. Shatter, Kyoka Suigetsu. Aizen walked calmly to the center stage, drawing his Zanpakuto from the scabbard at his waist. He flipped the blade so the tip pointed downward. Click. A clear, glass-shattering sound rang out. Instantly, a dense fog rolled out from around Aizen's feet. Reflections danced in the mist. Water shimmered. In the next moment, multiple Aizens appeared. Each indistinguishable from the real one, whether judged by eye or sensed through spiritual pressure. Clang. Just as Byakuya Kuachiki was watching intently, trying to analyze the technique behind Kyoka Suigetsu, he heard the sound of a blade sliding from its sheath. Right behind him. A cold blade pressed against the side of his neck. His whole body tensed. His breath caught. Hair stood up across his skin, like a cat sensing a predator behind it. Apologies, Kuachiki. Aizen's calm voice came from behind. Whether intentional or not, of all the people he could have chosen, Aizen picked Byakuya. The same noble who had previously clashed with Aizen. To demonstrate his Shikai ability. Byakuya didn't say a word. But his pupils contracted slightly, and a storm of emotion erupted within. He'd thought only Aizen could overpower him in this class. Yoruichi, older and already famous, was a given. But now. Aizen too? He had been unable to respond. No defense. No counter. Nothing. In front of Aizen, he couldn't block a simple Hado number 4, by a Kurai. In front of Aizen, he couldn't even sense the blade that was now at his throat. Why is it always me? He thought bitterly. The younger brother is terrifying. Now the older brother is terrifying too. Shiba Ishin stood there, stunned, watching Aizen silently sneak up on Byakuya. He couldn't hide the amazement in his voice. Aizen's spiritual pressure. It's easily at the captain level. And this is Zanpakuto ability. If he used it to assassinate, even a lieutenant wouldn't stand a chance. So this is Aizen's little brother? Incredible. To think a technique like that exists. No wonder they say he's a once-in-a-century genius. The others whispered among themselves, shocked by the demonstration. It might not be as flashy as Aizen's earth-splitting Byakuya, but the psychological impact was immense. Aizen had disclosed the ability openly. Yet even with that knowledge, Byakuya couldn't resist it and was defeated instantly. Aizen, your ability would be perfect for the second division. Yoruichi's eyes lit up with inspiration. You and your brother should consider joining us after graduation. Whether it's the executive squad, patrol corps, or special forces. You'll have your pick. Cough. Cough. Shiba Ishin interrupted loudly. Yoruichi-san, don't forget. You're not even officially holding a post right now. And this is still class, not a recruitment meeting. He turned toward the brothers with a grin. Aizen. How about considering the 10th division? I guarantee the benefits are just as good. Ishin straightened up with a flourish, trying to act the part of a serious instructor. His recruitment pitch may have been a bit casual, but the sincerity was real. As the captain of Squad 10, this was a rare personal invitation. Thank you, Teacher Ishin. It's truly an honor. Aizen finally lowered his hand from his face, smiling politely. But we're still students. We'll wait until after graduation before making any decisions. If the opportunity is there, we'll give priority to the 10th division. He completely ignored Yoruichi's suggestion. After all, despite her noble lineage, she held no true authority within the Shiyuin family yet. Her influence was limited at best. I agree with my brother. Aizen stepped in with a soft smile, pushing up his glasses. We appreciate the offer, but we'll consider it carefully when the time comes. After last night's ambush. And realizing that the culprits had backing from the 4 noble families. Both brothers had made a decision about their future paths. Neither the 2nd division nor the 10th would be their final destination. That's a good mindset. Right now, the focus should be learning and growth. Ishin nodded with approval. 2 outstanding students. Aizen. Majestic, ambitious. Aizen. Refined, humble. Different personalities, but both had the makings of future captains. Perhaps it was the shock of seeing Aizen's shike, or perhaps the spiritual pressure had somehow inspired them. When the students returned to their sword art meditation, something changed. More than one student heard their Zanpakuto speak. Some voices were faint and fragmented, but others were clear as day. Progress bloomed across the room. Kami Morisajin, Amigai Shujuk, and several others meditated with newfound focus. Their minds grew calm. Their spirits aligned. The class, which had once seemed average, was now filled with a sense of quiet intensity. The kind that comes just before a breakthrough. Chapter 23, Welcome to the Kyokusuagetsu Premium Package. After class following the end of the day's classes, Aizen carried his Zanpakuto and visited several other classrooms. Just as he had done earlier in front of Shiba Ishin and the others. The moment he explained the reason for his visit, the response from the teachers and students alike was one of shock. Soon replaced by excitement and deep gratitude. Everyone sat up straight, eyes filled with anticipation and respect, ready to receive the full Kyokusuagetsu experience. It was like offering a feast to every class. By the end of the afternoon, while the Spiritual Arts Academy still looked the same on the surface, in truth, the entire academy. From every instructor to every student. Had fallen completely under Kyokusuagetsu's hypnosis. Now, everything the teachers and students of the academy saw, smelled, heard, touched, or even sensed through spiritual pressure was no longer objective reality. It was only what Aizen allowed them to perceive. Congratulations to all the faculty and students of the Spiritual Arts Academy, Aizen thought silently, a trace of amusement playing in his eyes. Welcome to the Kyokusuagetsu Premium Package. He had witnessed all of it unfold. While mentally congratulating everyone at the academy for their inclusion, Aizen knew the moment they had been preparing for was drawing near. Whether it was settling scores with the 4 great noble houses who orchestrated the attack the night before, or enacting the long-prepared plan between him and Aizen, that day was fast approaching. Now, all that remained was to let time ferment. And await their early graduation. Aizen. He really did everything he said he would. From one of the upper floors of the academy, Shiba Ishin, who had not yet left the grounds, was watching the events unfold. His expression was complicated. Filled with both admiration and silent reflection. Aizen. If even one of these brothers were born into the Shiba clan, would we ever have to worry about our family's decline? He couldn't help but sigh in awe. A student who had attended his class for a short while had not only backed up his words with actions, but had done so on a scale that none of the teachers or captains could have anticipated. Meanwhile, elsewhere. In the 1st Division Captain's office, Captain Commander Yamamoto Genryu's Ishigakuni stood quietly, listening to the latest report being delivered by a member of the 1st Division's Special Forces, who knelt before him. His aged eyes slowly narrowed with thought. Regret. That was the feeling growing faintly within him. Yes, regret. Last night, fear had gripped his heart. The extraordinary talents of the Aizen brothers. Especially their potential to become the next sword demons like Zaraki or worse. Had forced him to hesitate. Coupled with the attack, and the political undercurrents he could sense, Yamamoto had made a cautious decision. He would not personally bring the brothers into the 1st Division. He had withdrawn, hoping to avoid creating monsters that might one day threaten the laws of the Soul Society. But now, after hearing what Aizen had said to Shioi Noruichi in class and seeing what Aizen had done throughout the academy, for the first time in centuries, Yamamoto questioned his own judgment. Sasaki, he suddenly said, turning his gaze to the lieutenant at his side, Chojiro Sasaki, do you think this old man made the wrong decision? Sasaki remained silent for a moment, then spoke with measured calm. Captain Commander, your concerns were valid. You feared that nurturing them directly might accelerate their growth into beings like the sword demons. Forces beyond control. But I believe not placing them in the first division does not necessarily mean they will turn against the Soul Society. They may very well become its greatest protectors. He paused, then added meaningfully, a sword demon or a captain. Sometimes, the only difference lies in a single thought. Yamamoto's eyes remained on Sasaki, unmoving. You're suggesting that if I had brought them under the first division directly, I could have guided them with proper mentorship. Kept them on a righteous path from the start, rather than letting them discover it through blood and battle? Sasaki nodded slowly. That's exactly it. Just because you aren't their official master doesn't mean you can't guide them. As the founder and principal of the Spiritual Arts Academy, as well as the Captain Commander of 13 Division of Imperial Guards, you already have the authority and the responsibility. Anohana Retsu was not your disciple either, Sasaki continued, yet under your watch, she gave up her bloodthirsty past and became the embodiment of healing and restraint. A moment of silence followed. Then Yamamoto's expression finally shifted. You've reminded this old man of something important, Sasaki. He took a deep breath and nodded with rare acceptance. Very well. Once the Aizen brothers graduate from the academy, if they haven't already committed to a division, go and personally invite them into the first division. They can replace Kuichiki Koga, who will soon transfer to the 6th division. I will train them myself. Sword art, hand-to-hand combats, flash steps and Kido. Everything. I will guide them directly. If they are under my supervision, then should they ever begin to stray, I will be there to stop it before it goes too far. Sasaki bowed his head respectfully. I think this is the best possible arrangement. At that very moment, in the 5th Division Captain's office, another pair of sharp eyes had been observing the same individuals. Humphrey. Aizen, that kid's fine. But that Aizen. Something's off. Very off. Hiroko Shinji, captain of the 5th Division, sat at his desk, staring at 2 student reports in his hand. His usual easygoing expression had faded, replaced with furrowed brows and concern. Something's wrong with that one. He didn't have evidence yet, but his instincts, sharpened by years of battle and politics, were screaming at him. Aizen Sosuke was hiding something. Chapter 24, to meet that mud-free flower Aizen Sosuke idiot, what's wrong with that? Isn't he doing great? Most Shinigami go out of their way to hide their Zanpakuto's abilities. But this freshman, Aizen? Just to help his classmates connect with their Zanpakuto during sword meditation, he openly released his Zanpakuto and even let everyone see his Shikai. You're just full of suspicion yourself, so you think everyone else is the same. Typical. Sarugaki Hori rolled her eyes at Hiroko Shinji, clearly unimpressed by his doubts about Aizen. Even though Aizen and Aizen had only been at the academy for a short while, their names were already being spoken across the entire 13 Division of Imperial Guards. From captains to lieutenants and even seated officers. Everyone was talking about them. If all he wanted was to help his classmates, I'd completely understand, Hiroko said calmly. I might even admire him, like you do. He'd be a kind, reliable guy. But now, everyone at the Spiritual Arts Academy has seen his Shikai. That's too much. That's not normal. Something's off. Very off. He's dangerous. Hiroko's tone was serious, and his brows were drawn tight. So you're calling him dangerous just because he showed off his Zanpakuto? I don't buy that. If that's all it takes, then you're no good either, idiot. Hori huffed, clearly annoyed. Exactly what I expected, Hiroko muttered. Trying to explain this to you is like trying to teach a rock to sing. Waste of time. But I guess this is what I get for choosing my own lieutenant. You might not be the brightest, but I'd still take you over that four-eyed fox named Aizen. At least you're honest. Hiroko leaned back and picked up Aizen's personnel file from the desk. If you haven't gone blind yet, take a look at where this guy was born. He tossed the document over. His birthplace? Hori asked, catching the file. Rakongai, North 80th District. She raised an eyebrow. So what? It's not like he's from Hugomondo. Exactly the point, Hiroko said, crossing his arms and legs. That's one of the 4 most lawless, chaotic districts in all of Soul Society. You're telling me a kind and noble guy like Aizen came out of there? Who would believe that? Who said people from District 80 have to be bad? Hori snapped. You? Or is it just that you've already made up your mind because of where he's from? Maybe his brother Ain protected him well. That's why he's turned out so pure. And don't forget, she added, Ain is no joke. He crushed a team of a lieutenant-level Shinigami and 9 third-seed-level officers like they were nothing. If anyone can raise a decent person, it's him. Hirako sighed. Talking to you is pointless. You drag me down to your level, then beat me with experience in being unreasonable. He stopped trying to convince her. But in his heart, the suspicion didn't fade. If anything, it grew stronger. Everyone trusted Aizen. Everyone admired him. That was the scary part. He stared at the photo clip to the file, a gentle smile, refined features, kind eyes. But all Hirako saw was ice. He stared a moment longer, then stood up abruptly. Snap. He let the file drop and walked out. Hey. Where do you think you're going? Tori called after him. To meet that mud-free flower Aizen Sosuke like so much, Hirako replied without looking back, shrugging on the 5th Division Hori and heading toward the 10th Division's area with a calm but focused stride. Shino-Kendo Hall, 15 minutes before class Ain and Aizen uttered together through the front gate. Thanks to the sword meditation class Shiba Ishin had led yesterday, nearly everyone had experienced rapid improvement overnight. The Rakongai students especially had shown major growth. Tausen Kaname and others were already inside, standing quietly in pairs and small groups as they waited for class to begin. Ain. Aizen. Whether it was Tausen Kaname and Damagai Shujuk from the outer districts, or noble-born students like Shayu and Yoruichi and Urahara Kisuke, everyone greeted them with visible respect. Ain was the undisputed top student in terms of talent and strength, standing head and shoulders above every other genius in Class 1. Aizen, on the other hand, had left a different kind of impact. Yesterday, he had openly released his Zanpakuto for everyone to see, a gesture that made a deep impression. His modesty, grace, and generosity had earned him admiration from all sides. Some of the students had even prepared breakfast in return. Tausen Kaname and Damagai Shujuk, grateful for Aizen's guidance, brought him a breakfast made entirely of tofu dishes. His favorite. Thank you. Aizen smiled warmly, accepting the meals with both hands. Here, this one's for you, he said, about to hand one to Ain. When a chocolate-colored hand suddenly extended in front of him, holding a beautifully wrapped bento box. You made one for me too? Ain blinked, clearly surprised. He wasn't shocked that Aizen had been given food. After all, several groups of students had already offered Aizen breakfast on their way to the hall. But for himself? He hadn't expected the heir to the Shayuin family to personally make something for him. You better eat it properly, said a teasing voice from the side. It was Shiba Kakaku, the only girl in Class 1 aside from Yoruichi. She looked at Ain with a wicked grin. Do you know how long she worked on that? All night. You'd better eat it with gratitude. Shut up, Kukaku. Yoruichi snapped, clearly flustered. I just wanted to try cooking for once. I made too much. That's all. I couldn't throw away something rich in spiritual energy, so I brought it to share. What's the big deal? Back then, Yoruichi was still a noble young lady. Not yet the wild, carefree royal she would become over the next century. In this era, she was elegant, restrained, even a bit shy. As her cousin Suifeng often described her, noble, radiant, and terrifyingly powerful. The cat-like shamelessness she would later become famous for was nowhere to be seen yet. Right now, she is still very careful with her image. Embarrassed by Kukaku's teasing, she tried to play it off, but the faint pink on her cheeks didn't go unnoticed. Chapter 25, So. Everyone just means Ain, everyone? I'm part of everyone too, right? So that means I get a share? Urahara Kisuke reached out cheerfully toward the bento box, but froze midway. That's because Shayuin Yoruichi was staring him down. Her gaze was sharp. Clear as day. Touch it, and I'll cut your hand off. So. Everyone just means Ain, huh? Kisuke awkwardly pulled back his hand. For a man who might one day invent the Hogyoku, losing his hands wasn't worth a bite of breakfast. Thanks, Ain said calmly. He glanced at Yoruichi, who kept sneaking glances his way but instantly turned her head whenever he looked back. A small smile tugged at his lips as he opened the bento box. Inside, eggs, beef slices, purple sweet potatoes, and a carton of milk. It looked plain, but every item was refined spiritual food. Dense with spiritual particles. Regular consumption would significantly boost spiritual pressure accumulation. Clearly, this was a typical breakfast for one of the 4 noble families. Well? Yoruichi asked, trying to sound casual. For the taste alone, I give it 97 points, Ain said with a light chuckle. The remaining 3 points are for your heart. He picked up a piece of egg and chewed it slowly. Yoruichi looked away with a huff, but the tips of her ears were red. Humphrey. Of course. Do you even know who cooked it? I've been making breakfast myself lately. I just accidentally made too much, so I brought it along. It's a waste to throw away food infused with high-level spiritual energy, she added, turning her back to hide her smile. Student Urahara, Aizen spoke up, smiling as always. If you haven't eaten, I still have extra breakfast. And so does everyone else. Anyone who hasn't eaten can take one. I can't finish them all, and it'd be wasteful to let them go bad. He walked toward the doors of the kendo hall, opened them, and revealed the mountain of bento boxes stacked behind. There were at least 100. You're really popular, Aizen. Kisuke was stunned. If Shino Academy had a strength ranking and a popularity ranking, said Shiba Keian in disbelief, you and Ain would dominate both. You can do it too, said Hisagi Shuai. If you showed everyone your shike, they'd admire you just like they admire Aizen. Not happening, Keian waved his hands. Uncle Ishin would kill me if he found out. Even if he wanted to, the Shiba family wouldn't allow it. Most Shinigami, especially noble families, treat their Zanpakuto's true power as a top secret. What are you all standing around for? Go on, take one. It won't taste good if it gets cold. Aizen encouraged them again. One by one, they moved. Urahara Kisuke was the first, followed by Tosen Kaname, Kame Morisajan, Shiba Keian, and even Byakuya Kuichiki who, for the first time ever, helped himself to a box. Indeed, few things brought people closer than sharing a meal. Though each person got their own box, as they sat and ate, conversations sparked naturally. With the walls of class and background momentarily forgotten, nobles and commoners chatted freely. It was a stark contrast to just a few days ago when many would pass each other with only a nod. Now, the atmosphere was warmer. Friendlier. But just as everyone finished their meals, a realization struck: it was nearly class time, and Shiba Ishin. The substitute teacher. Still hadn't shown up. That's strange. Uncle Ishin isn't usually late. As the bell rang and neither Ishin nor Yukitik appeared, doubts began to grow. Shiyuin Yoruichi was about to use flash steps to check when the door to the kendo hall suddenly swung open. A tall blonde man wearing a long-sleeved captain's hawari walked in. Sorry to keep everyone waiting. This is our first meeting. I'm Hiroko Shinji, your substitute teacher for today. Captain Ishin isn't feeling well, so I'll be handling your class. Today, I'll be teaching you all about kendo. Shinji walked to the center of the hall with a casual smile. Everyone blinked in confusion. A substitute? For a substitute teacher? Has the teaching situation at Shino Academy gotten that bad? To help you understand kendo more intuitively, I'll need a brave student to assist me. You there. The brown-haired one with glasses. I heard you're very helpful, and that you even released your shikai just to help your classmates understand Zanpakuto communication. So you don't mind helping your teacher, right? Shinji's eyes locked directly onto Aizen. Aizen's eyes narrowed slightly. From Shinji's entrance, he'd only been suspicious. But now he was sure. Hiroko Shinji had come for Aizen. And it made sense. In the original timeline, Aizen had hidden his true power carefully. And even then, Shinji had sensed something off about him. Now that Aizen was being open with his talents, of course Shinji would notice even sooner. No surprise then, that Shinji had arrived at the academy before graduation. I would be honored, sensei. Aizen's glasses gleamed, hiding the glint in his eyes. Though he smiled, warm as spring, a sliver of coldness lingered beneath the surface. To me, Shinji said, still smiling, kendo is just one horizontal, one vertical stroke. I stand. You fall. That's the path of the sword. To help you and the class understand this more clearly, you'll be my opponent for a real demonstration. He smirked slightly. Come at me with everything you've got. Treat me like your enemy. Imagine you have to kill me. Because I have a little quirk. Once I draw my sword, I can't hold back. If I get serious, someone might die by mistake. Then he reached for his Zanpakuto. To the others, it looked like he was just putting on an act. But Aizen, standing across from him, felt the wave of killing intent blast out like a storm. Clang. The sound of steel echoed in the hall. A flash of silver burst forth, the blade catching the light. Everyone shivered. In that instant, a razor-sharp strike rushed straight for Aizen's throat. Chapter 26, So, why don't I be your assistant instead? In the name of teaching swordsmanship, he launches a real attack. As a captain of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards, it's a blatant abuse of authority. With his rank, reputation, and a legitimate excuse to cover it all. No matter the consequences, he can recover from it. Ain instantly understood the moment Hiroko Shinji drew his Zanpakuto and stabbed forward. This wasn't a practice match. It was an execution disguised as a lesson. At this moment, Aizen was just a new student, only 3 days into his time at the Shino Spiritual Arts Academy. He wasn't yet the manipulative genius who would one day betray the Soul Society and clash with the heavens. He wasn't the future traitor of the 5th Division, the wielder of Kyokusuigetsu with unmatched illusions. Even when he would graduate and become a vice captain, Aizen wouldn't be feared unless his powers had already neared the top of Shinigami society. And now? He hadn't even attended proper classes on all 4 Shinigami disciplines. He'd just begun to explore Kido. He hadn't even touched Kendo. No flash steps training. No hand-to-hand combats experience. He was a blank slate with a powerful Zanpakuto still hidden. Facing Hirako Shinji in this state, Aizen could survive. He might even win, and decisively at that. But only if he fully exposed the secrets of Kyokusuigetsu. Is he testing Aizen himself, or is he suspicious of the Zanpakuto? Or both? Between life and death, the one who truly sees a Shinigami clearly. Is there Zanpakuto? Thought after thought surged through Aizen's mind like a storm. And sure enough, under the pressure of Hirako Shinji's ruthless swordplay, Aizen, who had never taken a single kendo lesson, was clearly overwhelmed. He was forced to retreat step by step. If not for the fact that their spiritual pressure levels were evenly matched, any other first-year student would have been gravely injured within seconds. Aizen watched it all, silently reaching toward the Zanpakuto at his waist. Then stopped. Because Aizen, amid the fierce exchange of blows, glanced at him. A brief moment, a silent message: "Don't intervene. I can handle this. I won't use Kyokusuigetsu." Still hiding his cards? Still refusing to activate Kyokusuigetsu? This guy. Is he really so talented that he thinks Shinji isn't here to kill him? Hirako Shinji stared at Aizen, a hint of amazement hidden deep in his eyes. This kid was absorbing his sword technique like a sponge, learning and adapting in real time. With each swing, he was closing the skill gap. It was terrifying. If Aizen also continued to grow like this, it would soon become impossible to defeat Aizen through kendo alone. After all, Aizen's spiritual pressure was already captain class. Clack. With that thought, Shinji changed grips. Switching from a one-handed to a two-handed hold on his Zanpakuto. Golden yellow spiritual pressure flared from his body, visible and oppressive, flooding the entire kendo hall. Clang. Blades clashed violently, and Aizen staggered back again under the crushing weight of the impact. And then, with a shout, Shinji raised his sword overhead. Boom. Spiritual pressure surged forward like a tidal wave. His next swing sent a concentrated slash of spiritual pressure screaming through the air toward Aizen. Massive, fast, and unstoppable. A death blow. Aizen. Many students stood up, eyes wide. It was obvious now. This wasn't a class. It was an execution. And no one, not Tosen, not Kamemura, not even nobles like Shiryu and Yoruichi or Shiba Keian, had the ability to block an attack like that. Not at this stage. It was a captain-level slash, combining both spiritual pressure and expert kendo. Bakudo number 81, Danku. Just as the slash was about to crush Aizen, a calm voice rang out. Not loud. But crisp, cutting through the chaotic kendo hall like a sword through fog. Everyone heard it. Even Hirako Shinji. Boom. A translucent barrier rose in front of Aizen like a towering fortress. Clear, smooth, and shining with spiritual light. The incoming spiritual pressure slash smashed into it. And shattered. The air trembled from the collision, but the Danku wall remained, perfectly intact. Not a crack. Silence fell over the hall. What? Bakudo number 81, Danku. He cast it without an incantation? And the defense is strong enough to completely block a captain's full power strike? But he's only been learning Kido for 3 days. All heads turned sharply toward Aizen, who was still sitting cross-legged at the side, calm as ever. Yoruichi, Keian, Byakuya. None could hide their shock. Hirako Shinji stared at Aizen, wide-eyed. To pull off Danku without an incantation. In 3 days of training. That's not genius. That's something else entirely. He had lived for hundreds of years. And never, not once, had he seen someone master a top-tier Kido spell like that in such a short time. You've gone too far, Hirako Shinji. Aizen's gaze met Shinji's. Eh? Shinji tilted his head with a smirk. What are you saying, student? I don't get it. Weren't you the one who disrupted the class, acting without permission? This is really difficult for me to explain to the teachers later. Shinji chuckled innocently, looking every bit the carefree captain. But everyone could feel it, the tension had shifted. Is that so? Aizen stood up slowly. Then I apologize. My younger brother isn't skilled enough. Making him your helper only humiliates him. And damages the quality of your class. So how about this? He smiled, stepping forward. Why don't I be your assistant instead, Captain Hirako? Though phrased as a suggestion, his tone and actions left no room for refusal. Fine by me. Shinji's grin widened. After witnessing that no incantation Bakudo number 81, Danku, he was more than curious. Was Ain just an unbelievably gifted Shinigami? Or was he like Aizen, hiding something deeper? If it was the former, he could admire it. If it was the latter, now was the best time to uncover the truth, before it was too late. Small challenge for you guys: if we hit 10 new comments on today's chapters, I'll drop 5 extra chapters later today. Let's aim for it before 7 p.m. UTC, Coordinated Universal Time. Chapter 27, What kind of sword style is this? Aizen, go back first. Ain stepped through the crowd and came to Aizen. Alright. Brother, be careful. Don't beat Shinji-sensei to death. Aizen glanced at his older brother. The moment he saw that cold, piercing look in Ain's eyes, unhidden and direct, his heart, once set on godhood, above all mortals, willing to treat everything as a chessboard and everyone as pieces, trembled slightly. Like a ripple across a still lake. Was this what it felt like, to be cared for? He didn't expect it. And yet, it made him happy. Hirako Shinji's expression twisted into something unreadable upon hearing those words. To everyone else, it sounded like concern. But to Shinji? It was like Aizen was goading his brother into killing him. Mr. Shinji, Ain called out with a faint smile. Kendo? Or a proper Shinigami battle? Facing Aizen's words, Hirako only gave a faint, unreadable nod. Then he turned, standing across from Ain. I'm invincible. You can fight however you want. Shinji's grin stretched across his face, filled with confidence and amusement. Sure, Ain casting Bakudo number 81, Danku. Without incantation had shocked him earlier. But he wasn't afraid. As a captain of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards, he had full confidence in his strength. After all, how could someone become a captain if they didn't stand at the very peak? Talent was one thing. But true strength required time. Since this is a kendo class, Ain replied evenly, what you had with Aizen just now was a sword duel. Why don't we properly finish what you started? He slowly placed his right hand on the hilt of his Zanpakuto and drew it from the sheath in a single, fluid motion. Sure thing. Even before his words had fully landed, Hirako Shinji activated flash steps, leaving only a blur where he once stood. He reappeared in front of Ain, like a wraith, Zanpakuto raised high, slashing down with immense spiritual pressure. The air around the blade trembled and cracked, as if boiling under the force. It was a simple strike, just a vertical slash. Elegant in its simplicity. Crude, but deadly. Like splitting a mountain in one blow. Simple, but in Shinji's hands, that technique carried destructive power few could match. Those watching from the sides felt cold sweat on their backs. Shioi Noruichi could only imagine retreating. Hura Harakisuke would probably sacrifice all his gadgets just to escape. Even Byakuya Kuichiki, if using Senbon Sakura in Shike, would see every petal sliced away. This was the gap in spiritual pressure. This was the difference in swordsmanship. When the two were combined, it created an overwhelming force. However, clang. The moment Shinji's sword came crashing down, Ain didn't flinch. He calmly raised his Zanpakuto with one hand, swinging from below to meet the blow. As the blades clashed, sparks flew violently. A shock wave of spiritual pressure exploded from the impact point, shaking the entire kendo hall. The wooden floor beneath them cracked like dry earth under an earthquake. Dust surged into the air, swept up in the spiritual pressure. But when it cleared, Ain still stood, unmoved. Shinji's full-powered slash, strong enough to split a hill, hadn't even made him take a step back. He blocked it with one hand. Steady. Unshaken. Interesting. No wonder your little brother told you to be careful. But if this is all you've got, Shinji smirked, then calling it deadly is just childish arrogance. Though he spoke lightly, the seriousness in his eyes betrayed his growing caution. That strike was no weaker than the one he had used on Aizen. But Ain handled it like nothing. In swordsmanship and spiritual pressure, he clearly surpassed Aizen. Is that so? Ain's eyes glinted gold. Flame-like golden spiritual pressure burst out of him like a wildfire. He shifted his grip, channeling spiritual pressure into his blade. Then, with one powerful swing, he released a crescent-shaped golden slash into the sky. Boom. Shinji's expression changed. The force that erupted from Ain's slash felt like a surging tide. He tried to resist, but the sheer pressure forced him backward. 10 meters in retreat. Before he could recover, Ain stepped forward, now gripping his Zanpakuto with both hands. With a smooth twist of his wrists, the blade arced in the air like lightning. He stepped in and slashed straight down. The way of the sword, twin breaks. The spiritual particles around them, invisible to normal eyes, instantly vaporized from the intensity of the strike, like snow caught in a blaze. Boom. Shinji stomped down with his right foot, forcing his body still. Using all his strength, he raised his Zanpakuto in a defensive crossguard just as the golden slash crashed down. Crash. The explosion of spiritual pressure swallowed everything in its path. Shinji was flung backward, spinning through the air like a cannonball, leaving a trail of torn air behind him. Though he used spiritual pressure as footholds to slow himself, the force still dragged him across the air, creating a trail of dust over 10 meters long before he barely managed to land. "That's all?" he mocked, raising his chin. But even as he spoke, his eyes widened. The way of the sword, 100-step flying sword. At some point, Ayan had switched to a one-handed grip. He drew his arm back. Then, he let go. Whoosh! His Zanpakuto cut through the air, releasing a high-pitched, piercing sound that echoed like a dragon's cry across the entire Spiritual Arts Academy. The released sword transformed in midair. Glowing with golden spiritual pressure, the blade turned into a massive energy dragon, its roar shaking the building, its eyes glowing with a savage light. It dived toward Hirako Shinji with terrifying speed. A flying sword technique. Backed by captain-level spiritual pressure. What kind of sword style is this? Shinji roared as he raised his Zanpakuto with both hands, aiming directly at the oncoming dragon's mouth. He struck the upper fangs while bracing his feet against its lower jaw, pouring his spiritual pressure into defense. But the force. It was too much. His body bent backward under the pressure. He couldn't find a stable footing. He was forced to retreat midair, helpless against the slanted energy torrent pushing him further and further back. Until... boom. He was sent crashing into the back wall of the kendo hall. The entire structure shook with the impact. Cracks spiderwebbed out from the point of collision. Dust fell from the ceiling. Silence followed. Even the students watching forgot to breathe. Small challenge for you guys: if we hit 10 new comments on today's chapters, I'll drop 5 extra chapters later today. Let's aim for it before 7 p.m. UTC, Coordinated Universal Time, Chapter 28. You nailed yourself to the wall? Puff. Suddenly, the sharp sound of a blade piercing flesh rang out. Ayan lowered his right hand in front of him. Hirako Shinji was bitten back mid-attack, and the spiritual pressure dragon he'd launched scattered instantly. Then, an unbelievable scene unfolded. There, nailed to the wall of the Shino Kendo Hall, was the captain of the 5th Division, Hirako Shinji. His right shoulder had been pierced straight through by a Zanpakuto, pinning him like a lifeless painting against the wall. From afar, it looked like some sort of grotesque art scroll. One that sent chills down the spine just by looking at it. The scene was too shocking for words. From nobles to ordinary students, every spectator stood frozen, eyes wide and minds blank. No one could believe what they were seeing. Tick. Tock. After a while, the only sound that broke the silence was the quiet drip of blood falling to the ground. Only then did the crowd slowly begin to snap out of their trance. That's the captain of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards. Ayan pinned him to the wall with just 3 sword strikes. Am I hallucinating? Did someone cast an illusion on me? Is Ayan too strong, or is the captain just too weak? Gasps echoed throughout the training hall as everyone began to process what they had just witnessed. This Ayan. Didn't he just enroll in the Spiritual Arts Academy a few days ago? How did he develop such terrifying swordsmanship so fast? Even Hirako Shinji himself was dumbfounded. In his hundreds of years as a Shinigami, he had seen many masters of the sword. From the strongest Shinigami of the millennium, Yamamoto Genryu's Ishigakuni, to the terrifying hidden monster Anohana Retsu, he witnessed legends. But not even they had shown sword talent like Ayan. Sure, Yamamoto and Anohana were stronger. But they had spent thousands of years honing their skill. Fighting in war after war, forging their mastery with blood, corpses, and endless battles. But Ayan? Just a first-year student at the academy. Yet here he was, defeating a captain in pure swordsmanship, and nailing him to the wall like a dead dog. With just 3 strikes. Even worse, Shinji could tell Ayan had held back. The blade avoided his vitals. If Ayan had intended to kill, the wound would have been fatal. Suddenly, Hirako remembered something Aizen had said earlier. Brother, don't go too far. Don't beat Shinji-sensei to death. He had laughed it off at the time. But now he was terrified. If this had continued as a pure sword fight, he might really have been killed by Ayan. Your swordsmanship saw you perform the feat of pinning a captain like a painting to the wall with your 100-step flying blade. Overjoyed, it has decided to teach you the technique you've been trying to grasp these past few days. Kendo, Hakuinhizo, way of the sword, 8-sword soaring. Ayan's heart leapt with joy when he heard the system's voice. As expected. All of his abilities were like show-offs who only worked hard when watched. The more dazzlingly he performed, the more enthusiastic they became in rewarding him. This time, he had humiliated a division captain. A major figure in Soul Society. And sure enough, Kendo came rushing forward joyfully, slapping him in the face with a freshly baked sword technique, 8-sword soaring. All it wanted was for him to use swordsmanship more in battle. By contrast, if Ayan focused on other Shinigami arts like Sword art, hand-to-hand combats, flash steps and Kido, while they'd still improve, their progress would be dismal. New techniques would develop slowly, and sometimes not even be handed out unless he really pushed for them. Tap. A figure suddenly appeared with a loud step in the middle of the damaged kendo gym. Its wooden floor cracked and splintered from the fight. It was Shiba Ishin. He had moved like he teleported, arriving in an instant. Shinji, you bastard. You let your lieutenant trick me. If anything happened to Brother Ain, I swear I'd have drawn my sword and cut you down. Shiba Ishin roared internally as he looked around in panic. Thankfully, both Ain and Aizen were standing safely, completely unharmed. He sighed in relief. Then, his gaze shifted to Hirako Shinji. And his jaw dropped. That expression was the same stunned look that Yoruichi, Urahara Kisuke, and the others had shown earlier when Ain nailed Shinji to the wall. Ah! What the hell? Shinji. What did you do? You nailed yourself to the wall? Shiba's voice was full of disbelief. Oh, right, Ain replied with a casual tone. Mr. Shinji said he would substitute for you today. He also invited me to assist in demonstrating what a real kendo duel looks like, so others could understand the essence of swordsmanship. As Ain spoke, he gently waved his hand. The Zanpakuto pin to Shinji's shoulder trembled, then flew back into his grasp like it had a mind of its own. That's about it. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave now. Since Captain Nishin is back in good health, this substitute teacher is no longer needed. Hirako Shinji let out a slow breath. Now that Shiba had returned, there was no point in dragging things out. He was already embarrassed beyond belief. In front of Ain, the students, and even fellow captains, he'd completely lost face. As much as he wanted to analyze what went wrong, all he wanted now was to get away and reflect on what happened. You're lucky today didn't escalate further. So I won't report this to the captain commander. But only this once. If I ever catch you using any tricks or excuses to harm my students again, I won't be so lenient. Shiba Ishin blocked Shinji's path, his tone deadly serious. It was clear he was furious. And rightfully so. Earlier, on his way to the kendo class, Sarugaki Hori had told him that the 5th Division was under attack and Shinji was missing. Though it wasn't his squad, as a fellow captain, Ishin didn't hesitate and went to help. As it turned out, he'd been tricked. Thinking back to Shinji's sudden warning last night about Aizen being dangerous, it all made sense now. It was a trap. Sarugaki Hori had lured him away so Shinji could confront Aizen directly. Thanks for your generosity, Captain Ishin. Hirako Shinji's expression stayed calm, but his eyes darkened. He didn't hold a grudge against Ishin. In fact, he felt a little guilty for dragging him into this. But Ain. The weight that Ain carried in Ishin's heart. It truly shocked Shinji. All this fuss, all this protection. For one student? Even a regular academy class was treated like a top-tier mission. That kind of influence, that level of trust and authority. Shinji couldn't deny it anymore. Ain was more than just a talented swordsman. He was someone you couldn't afford to underestimate. Small challenge for you guys, if we hit 10 new comments on today's chapters, I'll drop 5 extra chapters later today. Let's aim for it before 7 p.m. UTC, Coordinated Universal Time, Chapter 29. Do you want the Shiba clan to fall even further? This Aizen. There's definitely something wrong with him. When I pointed my sword at him earlier, there wasn't a single trace of fear in his eyes. Almost like he expected it. As Hirako Shinji remembered the subtle changes in Aizen's expression, the flicker of calm and calculation in his eyes, his suspicions only deepened. That confirms it. Aizen is dangerous. He sighed and narrowed his gaze. But what troubled him now was not just Aizen. It was Ain. Is he just a kind older brother, protective and loyal to his sibling? Or is he the mastermind? The one quietly enabling everything from behind the scenes? Hirako couldn't tell. And that was what bothered him most. But one thing was certain. If he wanted to expose or stop Aizen, he'd have to get through Ain first. And that gave him a headache. Unlike Aizen, whom he had came to suspect through action and behavior, Ain was an enigma. He had power, presence, and influence. Already enough to make even a 13th Division of Imperial Guards captain like Shiba Ishin take his side. But his true heart? Hidden. If Ain really is just a good brother, then fine. I only need to reveal Aizen's true nature to him. But if he's the one backing Aizen, the one encouraging him, then he's not just dangerous. He's 100 times more dangerous than Aizen. He took a breath, then turned to face Ain. His tone was steady, but sharp. You probably won't like what I'm about to say, but your younger brother isn't a good person. Even before he was born. While he was still in your mother's womb. He already had darkness in him. You might think I'm just picking a fight, but think about it. I'm the captain of the 5th Division. I have no reason to lie to you. No grudge. No benefit in targeting a student from the Spiritual Arts Academy. Aizen Sosk. Looks like a gentleman, polite and refined. But you should keep a close eye on him. If you truly don't want to lose your brother, then watch him carefully. Hirako stopped and looked straight into Aizen's eyes. This was it. The moment of truth. Was Aizen the loving brother? Or the real mastermind? Aizen's expression flickered. His gaze became slightly colder but also deeper. Of course, he didn't want to lose his brother Aizen. He knew better than anyone what kind of person Aizen would become. Cold. Proud. Lonely. Misunderstood. Pushed to extremes by betrayal, despair, and obsession with evolution. Until one day, even the Hogyoku gave up on him. So Aizen had made up his mind a long time ago to become the brother Aizen never had. To walk the path Aizen couldn't finish. To protect him from a fate where even his soul collapsed under the weight of isolation. To succeed where Aizen failed. To change things, not through cruelty and lies, but through overwhelming strength and undeniable results. And it all started here. With the visored incident. Apostrophe. You really do see people well, Aizen finally said, his voice low. You're right. I don't want to lose my brother. That's exactly why I'll make sure he never walks that dark path again. He paused for a moment, then added with a calm smile, and honestly. Although you did try to cut me earlier, that's also what convinced me you're not like Aizen. So I'll remember your words. I'll keep watch. Hirako Shinji glanced at the wound on his shoulder. The one from Aizen's counterattack. If that strike had been even slightly lower, his shoulder would have been unusable for weeks. Aizen had held back. And that wasn't mercy. It was a statement. A quiet warning. I know, Aizen said softly. Aizen is my younger brother. Hirako was slightly stunned. There was something odd in Aizen's voice. He had misjudged him. Aizen's earlier words, calm and polite, hit something darker underneath. If Aizen hadn't chosen to protect Aizen, if he hadn't restrained himself, he would be 10 times more brutal and extreme than Aizen ever was. This world. The Soul Society. Was built on power. And Aizen had it. Shino Academy, 13 Division of Imperial Guards, nobles. None of it mattered. Only strength. Aizen didn't say anything more. He turned and began walking away. That's all I have to say. Hirako didn't stop him. He had made his move. He had planted the seed of doubt. He couldn't expect someone to turn against their own blood with just a few words from a stranger. But he had to try. As Aizen passed by, Aizen was standing nearby. Hirako's sharp eyes observed him silently. That same soft smile. That same kind, humble demeanor. A perfect mask. Even now. After being watched, suspected, and nearly attacked. Aizen looked as gentle as ever. A spring breeze. But Hirako's heart turned cold. He had been watching closely since he stepped into the Shinokendo Hall. Still. No flaws. Not one crack in the mask. Captain Shinji, you really seem to have a strong prejudice against me. Aizen smiled gently, eyes slightly narrowed. Aizen Sosk. Keep hiding. But I'll keep watching. Hirako made a gesture. 2 fingers to his own eyes, then pointed directly at Aizen. Until you show your true self. Captain Shinji, are you ignoring my warning? Came Shiba Ishin's cold voice from the side. He wasn't happy. Earlier, he had tried to stop Shinji from making a scene. And now. He had gone right back to provoking Aizen. Captain Ishin, Hirako replied coolly, in strength and heart, you're solid. But when it comes to judging people. He raised a thumb. Praising Ishin. Then slowly turned it down. Insulting his judgment. That was the final straw. Boom. Shiba Ishin's spiritual pressure exploded. It filled the entire dojo with forceful pressure as his hand moved to his Zanpakuto. Don't be reckless, Captain Ishin. Central 46 strictly forbids captains from releasing their Zanpakuto inside Siriite AI. Do you want the Shiba clan, already declining, to fall even further? Hirako smiled fearlessly. You. Ishin's face darkened. He knew it was true. The once glorious Shiba clan had already fallen from noble grace. Now, barely hanging on in the Rakongai district. Only a few members were left. Keian, Kakaku, and Kanju. If even the Spiritual Arts Academy stopped supporting them, the family would collapse. He had already been tricked once. By Sarugaki Hori. Now this. But Ishin wasn't someone to abandon people. Even if Aizen was just a student, even if he'd only taught him once. He stood by those he chose to protect. Clang. Ishin slowly drew part of his blade. His cold gaze met Shinji's without flinching. He had made his choice. And he'd stand by it. With sword in hand. Small challenge for you guys, if we hit 10 new comments on today's chapters, I'll drop 5 extra chapters later today. Let's aim for it before 7 p.m. UTC, Coordinated Universal Time, Chapter 30, then, I'll personally go to the 5th Division. Alright, Captain Ishin. I won't target him again. Is that good enough? Hirako Shinji gave Ishin a long look. Seeing the determination in his eyes, and that he had already half-drawn his Zanpakuto, Shinji sighed inwardly. Troublesome. He knew he couldn't provoke Ishin any further. If the man really drew his sword here, no matter who won, the moment a captain-level fight broke out, Aizen would definitely be smiling inside. You're serious? Shiba Ishin still didn't quite trust Shinji's sudden change of heart. Yes. Not only will I stop targeting Aizen, I'll even apologize. I want to personally train him. After he graduates from the Spiritual Arts Academy, I'll transfer him to the 5th Division as my lieutenant. Captain Ishin, what do you think? Straight out of the academy, directly becoming a lieutenant. How's that for fast-tracking a career? A crooked grin played across Shinji's face. You. Ishin's expression darkened. He knew what Shinji was trying to do. If it were any other captain, such an offer would seem like a golden opportunity. But with Hirako Shinji, it was clear he was scheming. Sending Aizen to the 5th Division as lieutenant wasn't about mentorship. It was containment. But even knowing that, Ishin couldn't argue. As the 5th Division's captain, Shinji had the authority to make that call. Clack. Just as Ishin's mind raced, a hand reached from the side and gently pushed his Zanpakuto back into its sheath. Ain? Ishin turned his head to find Ain standing beside him, his hand still on the hilt of Ishin's sword. This is the second time. Hirako Shinji. You've gone too far. Ain smiled faintly, but to those present, the smile sent a chill down their spines. It felt like a blade was slowly being pressed to their throat. Cold, and terrifying. I don't understand what you mean. Is it wrong for me to mentor Aizen and offer him the vice-captain seat of the 5th Division? As the squad captain, it's my duty to promote talented subordinates who show promise and are respected by others. Or would you prefer I suppress him instead of helping him? Shinji narrowed his eyes. Whether Ain was a doting brother or a mastermind behind Aizen, one thing was clear, he was dead set on protecting him. And now that Aizen's mask had cracked, there was no going back. He didn't want to act yet. But he wouldn't hold back either. He would bring Aizen to his side. Not just talk. He would make it happen. Even if it made Ain angry, Shinji didn't care. He wasn't afraid of stepping on Ishin's toes. So why would he care about Ain? I'll give you one more chance to rephrase that. Ain's gaze locked on Shinji. Are you afraid your younger brother will surpass you? That's fine. I can train you too. How about this? Once you graduate, I'll transfer you to the Expeditionary Force. With your strength, you'll be captain in less than 100 years. Shinji chuckled. He was the 5th Division's captain. There was no reason to fear a mere student. Sure, Ain had shown his skill earlier by pinning his sword to the wall, but that was a display of kendo. When it came to sword art, hand-to-hand combats, flash steps and kido, Shinji had the edge. He had no doubt he could subdue a freshman who hadn't even mastered Bankai. If he couldn't split the Aizen pair through words, he'd use his authority to forcibly separate them. One would stay in the 5th Division. The other would be sent to the Expeditionary Force in Hugomondo. It was the most effective solution. Captain? Got it. Teacher Ishin, I have a question. What's the requirement to become a captain of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards? Ain shifted his attention. In his mind, he quietly praised Shinji. He really was the first Shinigami to realize Aizen's threat. Although Aizen had intentionally let himself be noticed, it still showed Shinji's insight and competence. No wonder, even after becoming a vizard, he could lead powerful ex-captains like Mugaruma Kinsai and Love Kawa. Sure, vizards fumbled when facing Aizen later, but they were all former captains and lieutenants. That said a lot. Now Shinji wanted to split the brothers up. It was the best move. To become a captain? Ishin thought for a moment. There are 3 ways. First, pass the captain's exam under the supervision of 3 captains, including the head captain. Second, be nominated by at least 6 captains and approved by 3 of the remaining 6. Third, defeat the current captain in a one-on-one duel witnessed by at least 200 squad members. Ishin's eyes widened suddenly. He realized what Ain was planning. The words that followed confirmed it. I see. In 27 days, I'll apply for early graduation from the Spiritual Arts Academy. Then, I'll personally go to the 5th Division. And challenge Captain Hirako Shinji. Ain's declaration stunned everyone. Yoruichi, Urahara, and even Ishin himself. Early graduation? In just 1 month? And not just that. Challenging a captain straight after? That had never happened in Seoul Society's history. Even applying for early graduation was a feat. The fastest ever recorded was a year. That's because mastering the core skills, sword art, hand-to-hand combats, flash steps and kido, took time. Comprehending and controlling one shikai and nikai? That took years. Even prodigies like Hitsuge Ayatashiro and Akamaru Jin had needed several years to graduate. You want to challenge me? Shinji stared in disbelief. Why not? I've already given you 3 chances. But you didn't take any of them seriously. So now, I'll deal with you myself. And let you understand just how foolish you've been, Captain Hiroko. Aien's tone was casual, like it was no big deal. As if graduating in 1 month and defeating a captain was no harder than kicking a pebble off the road. Effortless. Calm. And absolute. Chapter 31, I don't even need Benkai to defeat you, ha 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 ha. That joke wasn't funny at all. Did using your Zanpakuto earlier give you a big head? Do you really think the 13th Division of Imperial Guards captain is only this strong? Hiroko Shinji was stunned for a moment, then laughed in disbelief. Though there was a trace of irritation behind that laughter. It had been a long time. So long, he couldn't even remember the last time someone dared to look down on him like this. I don't know if all captains are like this. But I do know one thing. Captain Hiroko, you are just so-so. Ain spoke plainly, almost casually, as if stating a fact. You may leave now. Treasure the 27 days you have left, because this will be your last time holding the title of 5th Division Captain. After that, it'll just be a nice little memory for you to reflect on during retirement. A great experience to tell others, right? Graduate in 1 month. Master Benkai in 1 month. Challenge a seated captain in 1 month. Fine. Hiroko narrowed his eyes. I'll wait and see if you can show up with a real Benkai by then. It's just Benkai. How hard can it be? Aien's tone didn't waver. His words landed slow, clear, and sharp. Besides, I don't even need Benkai to defeat you. Each word was like a weight crashing down. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried a pressure that made people want to believe him. All right. I'll be waiting for you at the 5th Division barracks. I hope you're not all talk. Don't make me regret wasting my expectations on you this month. Hiroko's smile faded completely. Without another word, he turned and disappeared into thin air. Ain. Are you really planning to graduate a month early, and actually challenge Captain Hiroko? Don't joke like that, said Shiba Ishin seriously. Forget the challenge. Let's talk about early graduation first. You do realize how different the graduation standards are for each class, right? Shiba's voice drew everyone's attention as he began to explain with a straight face. For 3rd class students, just mastering the basics of sword art, hand-to-hand combats, flash steps and Kido is enough. Even if they haven't unlocked Shikai. 2nd class students have to do all that plus reach at least Bakudo level 40 and achieve Shikai. But the 1st class students. Your class. Have to meet all that and be able to chant up to Kido number 80. And I mean fully chant. That statement made the crowd quiet. The expectations were steep. But they were meant for elite students. Those called the captain candidates. Most Shinigami who graduated from 1st class became seated officers, lieutenants, or even captains if they didn't die too soon. That's not hard for Ain at all. Yoruichi grinned. Captain Ishin, maybe you missed it, but just now Ain used Bakudo number 81, Daiku, to completely block Hiroko Shinji's attack on Aizen. And he did it without chanting. And he's already awakened his Shikai, so doesn't that mean he could technically graduate right now? Everyone looked stunned. It was true. Ain had entered the academy with them just 3 days ago. In that short time, he had already fulfilled the most advanced graduation criteria. Hold on, Shiba replied. I said Kido up to 80. That includes Hado, not just Bakudo. You've all taken Kido classes. You should know, Hado spells are far harder to master than Bakudo spells of the same level. Just because he can chantlessly cast Bakudo 81 doesn't mean he can chant Hado 80 perfectly. Ain, can you? Just then, a voice sounded in Ain's ear. Your Kido feels insulted by Shiba's words. How dare he look down on you? Doesn't he know you mastered the full chant for Hado number 88, Dragon Strike Heaven Shaking Lightning Cannon? Just last night? Ain smiled slightly. Even before his inner system said anything, he already knew he'd improved his Kido again. Before, he could only fully chant Hado under 80 and use those under 70 without chanting. Not bad, considering he'd only attended 1 Kido class. Ain, where are you going? Shiba asked when he saw Ain silently turn and walk toward the exit of the dojo. Ain. Yoruichi called out too, but Ain didn't respond. Don't worry, Aizen said calmly, smiling faintly. We'll know the answer soon. As if understanding something the others didn't, Aizen walked out after Ain. The rest followed, curiosity and confusion building. They soon arrived at the Kido training field. Other students were currently practicing Kido spells under number 10, under the guidance of their instructor. Captain Ishin? You're supposed to be teaching sword art today, right? One of the Kido teachers greeted politely. Even though Shiba was a substitute teacher, He was still a captain of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards. That title commanded respect. Yes, but this student of mine needs to borrow the training field briefly. Is that all right? Of course. The teacher turned to his students and barked, everyone, step back. Clear the field. What's going on? Isn't that Ian? The strongest prodigy at the Spiritual Arts Academy in 2000 years? What's he doing here? Training? Even Captain Shiba came with him. All the students who were training earlier stopped to gawk. Their eyes followed Ian as he stepped onto the center of the training ground. He looked straight ahead. A wooden training dummy stood about 30 meters away. Captain Ishin, Ian asked, if I destroy the Kido dummy, I don't have to pay for it, right? Shiba laughed. Destroy it? Just because it looks like wood doesn't mean it is wood. That thing was built by Captain Senjimaru Shutara from the 12th Division and the Research and Development Bureau. It absorbs spiritual pressure and is laced with Sekai's stone. Let me put it this way. Unless you're a full-fledged captain casting a fully channeled Hado above number 80, you won't even leave a scratch. He chuckled again. Like someone who just heard a child ask, if I beat Yamamoto Genryu's, will I get detention from Central 46? Chapter 32, I couldn't imagine what Ian would be in 1 year. Just say it. Are you going to make me pay for the damage? Ian ignored Shiba Ishin's teasing and asked calmly. If you really manage to break the Kido training dummy. Then sure, I'll pay for it, Ishin said boldly. In his mind, that scenario was impossible. At least, not yet. If Ian had been training for a few more months, maybe there'd be a chance. But now, it was just talk. Then I'll thank Teacher Ishin for his generosity, Ian said with a faint smile. Before Ishin could respond, Ian raised his right hand and aimed his palm at the Kido dummy standing 30 meters away. Hado number 73, clashing of twin lotus blue fire. As each syllable left his mouth, the spiritual pressure in the air trembled. The moment he uttered the word fall, an intense, azure blue light exploded from his palm. Blazing heat surged outward, and a massive pillar of blue flame shot forth, piercing through the air like a comet and crashing down on the Kido dummy. Boom! The roar echoed like thunder. Blue flames of spiritual pressure engulfed the target. That training dummy. Crafted to endure Kido spells below number 70 from seated officers. Had never been visibly damaged by any Spiritual Arts Academy student. And now, it was trembling violently, its surface cracking under the devastating impact. No way. He just cast a Hado number 73, clashing of twin lotus blue fire. And he skipped the chant? Ishin's jaw dropped as he stared in disbelief. He instantly regretted what he'd just said about paying for damages. My god. What did I just see? That was Sorenso Katsui. Without an incantation, and it still had that much power? Is he the Spirit King reincarnation? The students around the field were stunned. When did this happen? He's only been studying Kido for, 2 days? This guy's not human. He's a damn monster. Even among the observing instructors, Gisukura Hara, Shioi Nyoruichi, and Tessai Tsukubishi. All prodigies themselves. Had shock written across their faces. He's already reached this level. The best I can do is chantless Hado number 58, tornado. Aizen thought, hiding his shock behind his usual calm gaze. Hado number 58, tornado. And Hado number 73, clashing of twin lotus blue fire. Might seem just 15 numbers apart, but in Kido, every 10 numbers mark a massive leap in power. Being able to abandon the chant without reducing a spell's power is something only captains of 13 Division of Imperial Guards can do. Among them, only the top-tier captains. Ono Hanaretsu, Shutara Senjimaru, Shun Sekiraku, Yukitake Joshiro, and Kuichiki Jinrai. Could cast Hado in the 80s without incantations and still retain full strength. As for Hado number 90, Black Coffin. And above? Even maintaining a third of the spell's power without chanting was considered extraordinary. When Aizen defected and reached peak strength, he could only preserve about 33% of Hado number 90, Black Coffin. Power without an incantation. That's how wide the gap was. This was Kido. Each tier. 10, 20, 30. Was a wall few could scale. Well, at least it didn't break. As the flame slowly faded, Ishin breathed a sigh of relief. The training dummy stood there like a cracked vase, but it was still standing. If it had cracked all the way through, the repair cost would have been far worse than a surface repair. It's just Hado number 73, clashing of twin lotus blue fire. Ian murmured to himself. Unless I can double my current spiritual pressure or reach level 18 spiritual pressure force, I still can't destroy it. But Bankai should do the trick. He frowned slightly, clearly dissatisfied. After just 3 days at the Spiritual Arts Academy, he could already cast Chantless Hado up to number 73. And yet, he still felt it wasn't enough. My Kido training has slacked a bit. I should shift my focus back to my Zanpakuto. After all, the soul of a Shinigami lies in their Zanpakuto. Your Kido is angry. He says he's been training very hard and that you've misunderstood. He practiced the full chant version of Hado number 88, Dragon Strike Heaven Shaking Lightning Cannon. Just last night. He's just low-key, that's all. As that voice echoed in Ain's ear, he noticed his Kido proficiency quietly rising again. He smirked. Over the past few days, he'd learned to understand his abilities. Personalities. His Zanpakuto constantly looked down on sword art, hand-to-hand combats, flash steps and Kido. Kido, on the other hand, was proud and refused to be seen as weaker than the Zanpakuto. His swordsmanship claimed it had soul, and wasn't any less than the others. Spiritual pressure? Spiritual pressure was the modest one, silently growing stronger behind the scenes. It was like they were all trying to one-up each other. And just now? He had merely thought about focusing on his Zanpakuto training, and Kido immediately jumped in, raising its power on the spot, like it couldn't stand to be ignored. And then, a new technique appeared in his mind. Hado number 73, Clashing of Twin Lotus Blue Fire. Huh? Isshin blinked. He could feel something strange coming from Ain. Then, Ain softly called out, Hado number 73, Clashing of Twin Lotus Blue Fire. He brought his fingers together like a blade, slashing downward. A massive, crescent-shaped arc of spiritual pressure tore through the air like a glowing moon and slammed into the Kido dummy. Crack. The crescent sliced clean through the already cracked dummy. And the next moment. Crash. The dummy split cleanly in two before crumbling into 1,000 fragments on the ground. He gave up the chant. Even for that level of Hado? The 78th spell, cast without an incantation. And with that much power? This is already on the level of a seated captain. Isshin's face was a mix of amazement and pain. His wallet was crying, but his heart was cheering. 3 days. That's all it had taken for Ain to surpass the Kido skill of most captains who had practiced for centuries. It was at this moment that Isshin realized something. The difference between Shinigami isn't just talent. It's realms apart. Some Shinigami work for 100 years and can't climb one step. And others, like Ain, they ascend like meteors. And he couldn't even begin to imagine what Ain would be like in 1 year. Let alone 10. Chapter 33, all because of one sentence from Shiba Isshin. Too strong. Shayun Yoruichi's voice trembled slightly as she stared at Ain, her golden eyes gleaming with astonishment. As the head of the prestigious Shayun clan, she had always been proud of her unmatched talent in flash steps, her noble heritage, her powerful presence, and her flawless appearance. Su Ifeng once described her as noble and radiant, yet terrifyingly strong. Her standards were high. If someone didn't stand out, they wouldn't even enter her field of vision. Even someone like Byakuya Kuichiki, despite being her childhood companion and heir to another noble clan, only barely passed that line. But with Ain. It was different. The more time she spent with him, the more she felt something strange. He wasn't just strong. He wasn't just refined. He felt higher. More noble than the nobles. More composed than the composed. His presence made her feel like the commoner in the room. What's this feeling? This is his power. She murmured. He's come this far already. Can I even catch up? Byakuya Kuichiki clenched his fists quietly beneath his sleeves, a rare flicker of frustration flashing in his eyes. After witnessing Ain cast Hado number 73, Clashing of Twin Lotus Blue Fire. Without a chant, and unleashing power rivaling a captain-level Shinigami, he was shaken to his core. Years of training, of discipline and legacy. It suddenly all felt hollow. Like he'd spent years barking up the wrong tree. Monster. Only 3 days. We're still struggling with Hado number 10. And he's already casting advanced Kido without chanting. The murmurs from the surrounding students grew louder. He's from Rakongai too. Just like us. Then why is the gap so huge? With that level of Kido, even most lieutenants can't compare. Even those from other classes. Students not even in the same division. Were shaken by what they saw. If Ain had come from a noble house and trained since birth, maybe they could have accepted it. But he came from the same place they did. And still. In just 3 days, he was already standing on a different level. Teacher Isshin, what do you think? Ain ignored the awestruck whispers as he walked calmly up to Shiba Isshin. The Kido pile seems expensive. After I become a captain, I'll treat you to dinner. Isshin stared at him for a long second, then suddenly grinned and gave a hearty laugh. You'd better. But hey, don't get cocky just yet. He raised his hand with a serious expression. You've proven your skill in Kido, sword art, and even spiritual pressure. That's impressive. But what about hand-to-hand combats and flash steps? You haven't touched those yet. Before Ain could reply, Yoruichi stepped in, patting her chest confidently. Leave that to me. If it's flash steps, I'm the best there is. I'll teach you personally. I'll make sure even Hirako Shinji can't catch up. She beamed brightly, confidence oozing from her. Shiba Ishin raised an eyebrow. Demon Cat, don't tell me you plan to teach him the clan's secret techniques? Byakuya Kuichiki stepped forward, frowning. That's going too far. Why not? Yoruichi raised a brow. He's worthy. Byakuya fell silent. The Shiyuin and Kuichiki families were equals among the four noble houses. Normally, secrets stayed within families. But due to their long history and childhood bond, some exceptions existed. If Yoruichi taught someone their techniques today, the Kuichiki might be expected to offer something equal in return. It wasn't a small deal. If your father finds out. Ishin muttered. Yoruichi waved him off, smiling without a care. He'll thank me. Ain, however, shook his head. No need, Yoruichi. I'll just attend the normal flash steps classes. After all, the opponent is only Hirako Shinji. Basic techniques will be enough. To anyone else, those words might have sounded arrogant. But after witnessing his swordsmanship and Kido power, no one could question his confidence. Sword art, hand-to-hand combats, flash steps and Kido. In the end, it all comes down to Bankai. Ishin's tone turned serious again. Bankai is the real test. It's the peak of Shinigami power. He glanced around at the others, then back at Ain. Even the most talented Shinigami from noble families take decades to achieve Bankai. Before Hura Harakisuke invented the training chamber, no one had ever done it faster. Take Chojiro Sasaki. Before he challenged head captain Yamamoto, he had already nearly mastered it. He was considered one of the best. And even then, it took a full month of high-pressure training to achieve Bankai. But you've been here 3 days. If you want to reach Bankai within a month, even Ichigo Kurosaki couldn't do that without risking his life. Ishin spoke the truth. The jump from Shikai to Bankai wasn't linear. It was exponential. Bankai is a complete evolution of Zanpakuto. Once attained, spiritual pressure multiplies 5 to 10 times over. Hirako Shinji's Bankai alone could increase his spiritual pressure 3 to 5 times in an instant. And that's not counting the ability itself. Most Bankai powers are far stronger than Shikai abilities. So, don't get distracted. Talent is one thing. Mastery is another. But as Ishin finished, something happened. Ain paused. And for the first time, 2 familiar voices. His most silent powers. Spoke up. 10 years? Your Zanpakuto scoffs. What trash? She says she'll awaken Bankai in 3 days, and fully master it in half a month. Your spiritual pressure follows up. Level 10 spiritual pressure right now. Just give me 10 days. No, half a month. And I'll reach level 18 spiritual pressure. Simple. Ain gave Ishin a subtle glance. This man. He really knows how to stir trouble. Even his Zanpakuto, usually aloof and cold, couldn't stay quiet. And his spiritual pressure. The most low-key among his powers. Also came out just to flex. In the past 3 days, Kido and Kendo had often spoken, showing off whenever they could. But spiritual pressure? It was silent. Steady. Humble. Until now. Now, even it was joining in the boasting. All because of one sentence from Shiba Ishin. Chapter 34, 60 Kinsai Point? That was in the past. Ain didn't take Shiba Ishin's words seriously. The so-called record of taking 10 years to achieve Bankai meant nothing to him. No one understood better than Ain how proud his Zanpakuto was. Now that it had declared it could achieve Bankai in 3 days and fully master it in half a month. When other Shinigami might need decades. There was no way it would fall behind. If anything, it would only exceed expectations. You've already reached the threshold of Bankai, haven't you? Right, Shiba continued. Once your Zanpakuto manifests and pulls you into your inner world to speak with you. If it even willingly submits, then mastering Bankai might not be far off. Judging by Ain's calm expression, Shiba couldn't help but suspect that this monstrous student had already reached the threshold of Bankai. And somehow, it felt entirely reasonable. After 27 more days, we'll know for sure. By then, I'll have to ask you a favor, Teacher Ishin. I'll need 200 Shinigami to stand in as my audience. Ain smiled faintly, not wanting to elaborate too much on the subject of Bankai. The threshold? He didn't need to do anything. His Zanpakuto, Kafuin, would build the Bankai itself and hand it over to him when the time came. Even Shiba Ishin, with all his imagination, could never guess the truth. That this young man didn't have to do a thing. Worried that Hirako might back out after he loses? Ishin asked, sensing Ain's calm confidence. For nearly all Shinigami, becoming a captain of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards was like standing before a massive, insurmountable mountain. But the black-haired youth in front of him didn't seem fazed. To Ain, It was just a checkpoint on the path to true power. A temporary pause before moving forward. What do you mean worried? You were the one who said it, Teacher Ishin. In order to replace a captain, you must defeat one in front of 200 Shinigami. So of course, I'll need your help. You're the only one willing. Ayan chuckled. But in his heart, he was sure Hirako Shinji wouldn't back down. After all, Hirako was the type who, once he sensed danger. Especially from someone like Aizen. Would go all in. He was a captain who knew how to push boundaries and use any means necessary. There was nothing he wouldn't do. Don't make me hate myself. I can get you 200 Shinigami, but only if you promise me one thing. Don't kill Hirako Shinji. Let him live as long as possible. Ishin's words stunned everyone nearby. Shiyu and Yoruichi, Kame Morishijin, and the rest. What did he mean? Did he already assume Hirako Shinji would lose? Teacher Ishin, shouldn't you be saying that to Captain Hirako instead of me? Ayan raised his hands as if in protest. Ayan, please agree to this. I'm not asking this just for Hirako's sake. It's for yours too. Sure, killing a captain in a formal duel isn't illegal. But the 5th division isn't like the 11th. Soul Society can accept one Kenpachi, but not two. Hirako Shinji is a well-connected captain with influence. If you kill him, many other captains, lieutenants, or even the captain commander will take issue with it. It would make things difficult for your future. Ishin spoke seriously. He knew Hirako was responsible for the situation, but he also knew he couldn't change Hirako's mind. So he had no choice but to appeal to Ayan. We'll see. Ayan didn't promise, but he didn't reject it either. Ishin sighed. That was good enough. His connection to Hirako wasn't deep anyway. He'd done all he could. Once class ended, under the watchful gaze of Ishin, Yoruichi, and the others, Ayan and Aizen left the kendo hall, heading for the dormitory. At least, that's what it looked like. In reality, neither of them had moved an inch. They were still seated inside the kendo hall. All of this was part of Aizen's illusion. We really caught a big fish. And not just one. There's a whole group tailing us. Ayan sat on the kendo hall steps, leaning back casually. Expected. Siri-eyed AI has stood for over 1,000 years. Of course, there are people who can see through my disguise. Too bad, what they saw is exactly what I wanted them to see. What they fear is exactly what I want them to fear. Aizen smiled. At that moment, every teacher and student in the Spiritual Arts Academy was still under the illusion of Kyokusuigetsu. If anyone overheard their real conversation, it would shake the entire Soul Society. Especially Hirako Shinji. He believed he had spotted something dangerous, when in fact, every step he took was guided by someone else's hand. You're right, Ayan said. Hirako is good at reading people. But not good enough. He can see you, but not me. He thinks he found us. But from the beginning, it was us who selected him. Since yesterday, I cast Kyokusuigetsu across the entire academy, just to draw him in. The weight of Ayan's words was chilling. Hirako Shinji hadn't stumbled upon them. He was baited, lured. Chosen. If he's going to become an obstacle, then we should just remove him, along with the other captains close to him. Of course, Aizen added, as you said, even toilet paper and underwear have their uses. A captain should be useful too. You can take his division. I have other plans for him. Aizen's voice was calm. As if he were talking about a bug. Not a captain of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards. Experiments? Ayan guessed. Exactly. I've been combing through the Spiritual Arts Academy's archives, and I've spoken to both Ishin and Joshiro Yukitake. Spiritual pressure enters a limit after a certain point. Growth slows to a crawl. Eventually, Shinigami hit a bottleneck that can last 10 years. 100. Even thousands. Not just spiritual pressure. Sword art, hand-to-hand combats, flash steps and Kiddo. All reach a bottleneck. Aizen's expression turned serious. Take spiritual pressure, for example. Once it's 10 times what I have now, I believe I'll reach my limit. Any growth afterward would be extremely slow. That limit. Every Shinigami faces it. The only way to break it is through external force. It's likely the same for hollows. Even with Benkei, where spiritual pressure multiplies 5 to 10 times. It eventually hits the ceiling again. It's meaningless. He said this with frustration. Frustration at being unable to chase higher power. Ah, that's the 60 Kensai point. Ayan nodded casually. He was curious. Would he hit the same wall Aizen did when he reached that point? 60. Kensai? Aizen blinked, confused. He had studied everything in the Spiritual Arts Academy's library, but had never heard of this term. Chapter 35, Don't I Have Some Privileges? I met a Shinigami captain named Muguruma Kensai. Among the captains, in terms of spiritual pressure and strength, he should be considered the weakest one. So, I use it as the unit of measurement for spiritual pressure. Seeing the erudite and talented king, Ayan was rarely puzzled, so he explained. This unit of measurement is good, vivid and intuitive. According to your statement, 60 kinsai is my limit period. Aizen couldn't help but smile. As expected of you, you actually took the name of a Shinigami captain as the unit of measurement for spiritual pressure. But seeing it, he thought it was easy to use, so he took it. What are you going to do? Ayan asked with interest. Because of him, Aizen changed the way of doing things, completely different from the original book. It's not about keeping a low profile and acting secretly. Instead, he blatantly showed his talent, but he also did not forget to put on a gentle personality, which made it easier to act. Since there are boundaries between Shinigami and Hollow, what would happen if you poured Hollow's power into Shinigami's spirit body? Conversely, what will be the result after Hollow's spirit body is infused with the power of Shinigami? The experimental results of ordinary Shinigami do not have any reference for us, so here we need Captain Hirako to tell us the answer. If he can contribute to the experiment that breaks and surpasses the boundaries of Shinigami, he should be very happy to do it. Aizen talked and laughed happily, but the information in the words made people shudder. Of course, before that, we still need to go to a place. As he spoke, he looked towards Ayan. Huko Mundo. Ayan spat out 2 words. Yes. The experimental results of ordinary Shinigami have no reference significance for us, and the experimental results obtained by capturing the ordinary Minnows Grand that invaded the Soul Society are also of no reference significance. In order to facilitate the experiment, and to leave us a base camp where we can attack, retreat and defend, Huko Mundo is the best choice. After all, there are not only countless virtual objects for us to experiment with, but also Vasto Lord, which is no less than Hirako. Excellent material for a captain. Aizen nodded with a smile. It's so pitiful, even death is a luxury. Ayan shook his head. From the time Hirako Shinji said to Aizen, when you were in your mother's womb, you were a bad breed in front of everyone, he knew that Hirako Shinji's end would be bleak. Not only Hirako Shinji, but also those captains and lieutenants who are friendly with him will also be targeted by Aizen for their wild words. Death, that is a luxury. Not only for Hirako Shinji, but also for the captains and lieutenants around Hirako Shinji. After all, who doesn't know that Aizen seems to be broad-minded, magnanimous, and caring for his subordinates, but in fact he just treats the people around him as pawns and likes to play and dominate at will. Even his subordinates are like this. Let alone Hirako Shinji. Just when the Ayan brothers were talking and laughing and planning the future, they made clear arrangements for the future and ending of Hirako Shinji, the Shinigami captain and Shinigami lieutenants beside him. The other side. After Hirako Shinji left the Shinokendo gym, he glanced at the painful wound on his shoulder, frowned, and cursed inwardly. Damn Aizen. Yes. Although it was Ayan who hurt him, he couldn't help but want to scold Aizen. Immediately afterwards, he left Spiritual Arts Academy without looking back. But instead of returning to the 5th division, he went to the 4th division. At the shoulder wound, the breath of spiritual pressure that has not dissipated for a long time made him feel that something was wrong. Although a little timid, I can only go to the 4th team to find Anohana Retsu. After all, as one of the veteran captains, others don't know it, but Hirako Shinji knows it well. Anohana Retsu is not only one of the best masters of Sariite Aikido, but also one of the best opponents in Kendo. Professional counterparts. Even if you feel a little hairy when facing each other, you can only bite the bullet and go there. Captain Anohana, I am here to visit you. Hirako Shinji strode into the 4th team, but as soon as he entered the door, he was pushed aside by Anohana Retsu. Captain Hirako? Please squat to the side. I'm still busy. I don't have time to greet you at the moment. Anohana Retsu stood by the hospital bed, while performing Kaido treatment on a non-Mitsukido member lying on the hospital bed. He did not forget to take time out of his busy schedule to deal with Hirako Shinji. Captain Anohana, I am also a captain of the court guard. Come here, don't you have some privileges? Like jumping in line or something? Hirako Shinji curled his lips, yelling that he was the captain. What did you say? Anohana Retsu turned her head, showing a gentle and peaceful smile, but in Hirako Shinji's eyes, it was a devil's smile. Nothing. I'm just squatting here. You are busy. Hirako Shinji swallowed hard, then found a corner by himself, and squatted without saying a word. The young, uninformed captain didn't know. How could he not know? The woman in front of her, under her gentle and compassionate appearance, hides a murderous, militant and crazy heart. It's just that in Sariite, there is Yamamoto Genri Uzai Shigekuni suppressing, and above Sariite, there is also the 0 Division suppressing. In addition, 13 Division of Imperial Guards, who used to be a killer group, has now become the Guardian of Order in Sariite. The once unprecedented villain has now become the angel in white who saves lives and heals the wounded. Hirako Shinji, who didn't want to see Ano Hanaretsu draw his sword, was very honest. This waited for more than half an hour, but still did not dare to show any impatience. Your injury? It's caused by the way of the sword. It's strange, this breath was not cut by the captain. Ano Hanaretsu has come to Hirako Shinji. After she glanced at the wound on the opponent's shoulder, she couldn't look away immediately. After scrutinizing her for a while, it was as if the hidden desire in her heart had been ignited, and an irrepressible longing and excitement gradually emerged from the depths of her beautiful eyes. Which captain did it? Ano Hanaretsu looked up, staring at Hirako Shinji. Is it important? As a doctor, isn't the first task to save lives and heal the wounded? Hirako Shinji is also a face-saving person. How dare I tell people in person that I was hacked by a freshman from Spiritual Arts Academy, and I was still nailed to the wall of the kendo hall, unable to get off. Ano Hanaretsu didn't speak, just stared at Hirako Shinji with a smile. Captain Ano Hana, speak up if you have something to say, don't just draw your sword if you disagree. Okay. Let me tell you, the person who hacked me was not a captain, but a man named An. After Hirako Shinji caught Ano Hanaretsu's right hand out of the corner of his eye, and it was already stretching towards the handle of the knife at his waist, he said very sincerely. Having said that, it's just a shame. Don't say it, it's life-threatening. Chapter 36, How could she not be excited? I knew that no Shinigami in 13 Division of Imperial Guards had swordsmanship like that. An? I think I've heard the name before. When Ano Hanaretsu heard Hirako Shinji say that the one who cut him wasn't another captain, she didn't look surprised at all. She might not know every single person in the 13 Division of Imperial Guards, or every hidden powerhouse lurking in the shadows, but she knew nearly all of them. At least 9 out of 10. And within all of Siri Itai, there wasn't a single Shinigami who could wield a sword with such skill and elegance. Not even one. I remember now. He's the top student from this year's Shino Academy. Ano Hana recalled An's identity clearly. Captain Ano Hana, aren't you surprised at all? A freshman from the academy actually managed to hurt me, a captain of the 13 Division of Imperial Guards. Seeing her calm expression, Hirako Shinji couldn't help but look confused. For someone with that kind of swordsmanship, it doesn't matter if he is a freshman or not. It's no surprise he cut you. He probably went easy on you. If that blade had gone just a bit deeper, or a little lower, you might not be here right now. Ano Hana glanced at Hirako without much emotion in her eyes. Age? Noble status? Rank? Those things never mattered when it came to actual power. Captain Ano Hana. You seem really interested in this, An, Hirako said with a slight smirk. His eyes narrowed slightly. It seemed like something unexpected had come from all this. At first, he had just come to get his wound treated. But now it seemed like something far more dangerous had been triggered. Ano Hanaretsu. This woman, known as the greatest hidden danger in all of Soul Society, was interested in An, if she had truly taken a liking to An. Even if he still wanted to protect Aizen, it would probably be too late. Ano Hana didn't respond. She silently used Kaido to treat the sword wound on Hirako's shoulder. But even if she didn't speak, the look in her eyes said everything. An. He's mine. Yes. Just one look at the wound on Hirako Shinji's shoulder was enough. Ano Hana's heart trembled slightly, and an uncontrollable flood of desire and excitement surged within her. She couldn't stop it even if she wanted to. And it wasn't just because of the strength in that cut. It was because this was a kind of kendo that had never existed in the Soul Society before. As the one known as the Ichiru of the Kinpachi, she had mastered every sword style in the Soul Society. But now, someone has created something new. Something powerful, unique, and elegant. How could she not be excited? More excited even than when she first met Kenpachi's Araki, who had yet to seal his power. That fight had stirred her blood, but it hadn't been the true sword duel she longed for. This might be that night. As if by some silent agreement, both An and Aizen chose to begin training after returning to their dormitory. Only difference was, Aizen was studying flash steps, sword art, Kido, and theoretical lessons on his own. Meanwhile, An lay flat on his bed, calmly watching his Zanpakuto, Kido, flash steps, and sword art. All practicing by themselves. Yes. He watched while his abilities drained themselves. He wasn't practicing. They were. Your Kido coughed up spiritual blood until 3 a.m., vowing to master Bakudo number 90 with incantation emission. Your Kendo sneered, saying it would train until 5 a.m., pushing to create new sword forms. Your flash steps announced it would stay up all night to overtake everyone and proudly reported it had just mastered the third form of the 4 maple stealth footwork techniques. Kucho, empty glide. An watched all this silently, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction. These powers of his always pushing themselves to improve, to grow stronger. With this kind of development speed, why couldn't he surpass the Soul King? So what if he had no Quincy bloodline? So what if he wasn't born with hollow powers? So what if his techniques were incomplete? Even as a pure-blooded Shinigami, with this level of self-discipline and effort, he would surpass them all. This feeling. It's so calm, yet so overwhelming. Someone's looking for me? Aang frowned slightly. Just a moment ago, he'd been enjoying watching his powers improve on their own. But now, something made him sit up straight in bed. A gentle voice suddenly entered his ears. Aunt Sosk. Good evening. I am Anohana Retsu. Forgive me for the late-night visit. His face stayed calm, but in his mind, thoughts raced rapidly. The first Kinpachi. Her goal tonight was obvious. And sure enough, her voice followed with a polite-sounding but dangerous request. Would you let me witness your swordsmanship? Anohana's tone was soft, like a spring breeze through the trees. It sounded like she was asking permission. But Aang knew better. If he dared say no, this woman, this hidden monster of Soul Society, wouldn't politely wait for an answer. She'd draw her blade, crash into the academy, and cut down his door. Then she'd force him into a fight. First Kinpachi, huh? Interesting. It's all because of the wound on Hirako Shinji's shoulder. Aang chuckled. The corners of his mouth lifted slightly. He looked like a child who had just found a favorite new toy. Then, without hesitation, he grabbed his Zanpakuto, stood up, and walked toward the door. Coincidentally, just as he opened the door of his dorm room, the room across the hallway opened too. Aizen stepped out. Although the voice transmission was aimed only at Aang, it wasn't enough to escape Aizen's senses. I used Bakudo number 58, Chase Sparrow. To track the spiritual pressure, Aizen said casually. It wasn't easy. This one is very different from a normal Captain Imperial Guard like Hirako Shinji. In fact, even Shibazushin doesn't seem to have this kind of focused pressure. Aang opened his mouth and said the name. Anohana Retsu. The captain of the 4th Division. A healer from the Medical Corps. Has spiritual pressure far above Hirako Shinji's? Is Soul Society really this blind and corrupt? Or is it because Yamamoto Genryu's Ishigakuni is too old-fashioned? Putting a swordswoman like her in the 4th Division? Aizen's tone carried surprise, but also something darker like doubt. At this point in time, he was still just a freshman. Not yet a member of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards. He hadn't even graduated from the academy. So he hadn't yet learned the truth about Anohana Retsu. His understanding of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards came from a few vague words dropped by nobles like Shioi Noruichi and Hura Harakisuke, or what he'd read in the Shino Academy library and heard from his classmates. But that didn't matter. What mattered, Anohana Retsu had come. And she wasn't here for tea. Chapter 37, You're not even worthy to polish her shoes. She even came to me for a date, Aunt said casually, revealing Anohana Retsu's true intention. The captain of the medical division. Invited you to fight in the middle of the night? Aizen raised his eyebrows, finding the whole thing bizarre. Wasn't the 4th Division supposed to be about healing and support? Since when was their captain so bloodthirsty? In the dead of night. With swords drawn, Aang nodded, equally surprised but undaunted. With his Zanpakuto in hand, he calmly walked toward the source of the spiritual pressure. Interesting, Aizen murmured, a spark of intrigue lighting up his eyes. It seems the 13th Division of Imperial Guards runs much deeper than I imagined. Not all captains are just convenient test subjects like Hirako Shinji. He watched Ain's back disappear into the night and followed after him with quiet steps. Following the flow of Anohana's spiritual pressure, the two left the Spiritual Arts Academy and eventually arrived at a secluded forest. On a high hill under the pale moonlight stood a lone figure. Bathed in silver light, Anohana Retsu waited quietly, her silhouette both serene and terrifying. You don't mind if I bring an audience, do you, Captain Anohana? Aang asked, stepping forward. If you don't mind me cutting him down if you bore me, Anohana replied softly, her voice gentle like water. But her words sent chills down the spine. Leave him. Your blood alone can entertain me. Aang didn't flinch at all. He merely smiled. That won't be necessary. Oh? Then draw your blade, Anohana whispered, her voice trembling with anticipation. Let me witness your sword. I can hardly restrain mine any longer. Ain's smile sharpened slightly. She's here because of the cut I left on Hirako Shinji. It all made sense. For someone like the first Kinpachi, only the sword mattered. And the technique he used, 100 steps flying sword, was something Soul Society had never seen before. As you wish. The moment the words left his lips, Aang vanished, his figure and spiritual pressure disappearing like a phantom. In the next instant, he appeared before Anohana, slashing straight for her waist. Clang. Sparks flew as Anohana met his blade with her own, drawn with a single motion. Zanpakuto clashed, sending a flash of light across the dark forest. "Sparkling blossom of the Kuachiki clan," she said calmly. "I forgot to tell you. This form of swordsmanship was invented by me." She was unimpressed. "That's not what I want to see," she added coldly, and with a swing of her blade, unleashed a surge of spiritual pressure that forced Heian backward. Before he could even land, she flashed forward. Her blade gleamed in the moonlight, its tip aimed straight at his heart. Way of the sword, twin breaks. Still in the air, Heian didn't panic. He gripped his blade with both hands and struck downwards with all his strength. A surge of raw spiritual pressure exploded outward. Spiritual pressure gathered to the blade, forming a massive golden slash that lit up the sky and crashed toward Anohana. "You think something like this will stop me?" Anohana didn't dodge. Holding her Zanpakuto with one hand, she blocked the attack directly. Hirako Shinji had been completely overwhelmed by this move. But Anohana stood her ground. And she wasn't done. As she blocked the spiritual pressure slash, her left hand hidden within her sleeve suddenly shot out. A tiny dagger emerged from her sleeve, moving like a snake, striking toward Dane's neck at an impossible angle. "Is this really swordsmanship from a medical captain?" Aizen, standing at a distance, was stunned. In just seconds, he had seen 5 completely unique sword techniques from Anohana. They were brutal, beautiful, and terrifying. This wasn't the gentle captain of the 4th Division. This was the Kinpachi of old, the monster who once ruled the battlefield through fear and blades. Hirako Shinji wouldn't last a second. If even Shiba went head-on against her, he'd be sliced to pieces. Aizen's smile deepened. Yes. This was the right call. He had originally planned to challenge Aizen himself to gauge the gap between them, but now Anohana had done him a favor. He could learn simply by watching. Same division captain. Same swordsmanship, Aizen muttered. But Hirako Shinji. You're not even worthy to polish her shoes. Aizen, meanwhile, parried the hidden dagger with ease, and let out a sigh in his heart. The difference was obvious. Against Hirako Shinji, he dominated from start to finish. 3 moves, and it was over. But Anohana? Every strike was sharp. Every technique is deadly. She was toying with him and yet pressing him to the limit. "That's enough warming up," she said suddenly. "How long are you going to hold back? Aizen. Give me your real sword." Her soft eyes burned with craving. Swordlust. Desire. Aizen narrowed his eyes. "You want to see the 100 steps flying sword?" He raised his Zanpakuto, then flicked his wrist. Roar. The blade flew from his hand, letting out a deafening roar like a dragon's cry. The night trembled. Birds scattered, beasts fled, and the very air cracked under the pressure. Clang. Under Anohana's widened eyes, the flying Zanpakuto transformed midair into a golden dragon of pure spiritual pressure. With one flick of its tail, it knocked away Anohana's blade and sliced through a dozen massive trees behind her. Aizen stood midair, his right palm facing downward. The golden dragon circled in the sky, roaring as if alive. Then, with a thunderous cry, it dove. The entire night lit up as the sky itself seemed to collapse under the dragon's descent. This is the sword I was waiting for," Anohana whispered, a smile blooming on her lips. "This is the duel I've longed for. A style of kendo that has never existed in Soul Society. Let me be the one to cut it down." She didn't retreat. Didn't flinch. For the first time in centuries, her heart raced. Not since she gave up the title of Kenpachi and joined the 4th Division had she felt such pure, overwhelming joy. Chapter 38, Your only concern should be whether Kaido can heal defeat. Seeing Aizen finally unleash the 100-step flying sword that she had long yearned to witness, Anohana Retsu no longer held back. As the first-generation Kenpachi, she had her own pride. Since Aizen hadn't used his Zanpakuto's abilities, she chose not to use hers either. Boom. Facing the massive golden spiritual pressure dragon crashing down from above, her body exploded with blood-red light, thick as a crimson mist. Her spiritual pressure, carrying a sharp and chilling blood scent, surged into the sky, completely engulfing her. The moment she clashed with the dragon, she swung her sword one-handed. The blood-red blade of spiritual pressure erupted with terrifying power, crashing into the dragon head-on. Her aura, worthy of the title First Kenpachi, met Aizen's monstrous slash in a violent collision. There were no Kido. No colorful spells, no Shikai or Bankai abilities. Only raw swordsmanship. Pure and primal. Bang. 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 Despite the simplicity, the clash released terrifying power. Sword force tore through the area, uprooting massive trees and instantly chopping them into splinters. The ground cracked like dry earth, creating spider-web-like fissures. Dust and debris rose in towering waves, shaking the sky. In the center of the forest, the spiritual pressure dragon and the bloody sword light fought for dominance. The night sky was torn in two. On one side gold. On the other blood. It created a scene as surreal as a dream, yet deadly real. Crack. No one knew how long the violent struggle lasted until the sound of something tearing like ripping silk cut through the chaos. The blood-red sword light shattered. The golden dragon dissolved. Even the huge dust column that had surged into the sky scattered and collapsed. Silence returned. In what used to be a forest. Now nothing more than a scorched battlefield. Came the soft, chilling sound of blood dripping onto the ground. Drip. Drip. The feeling of a blade piercing flesh. It's been so long. Anohana Retsu's body trembled slightly, then quickly steadied. She lowered her head to look at her chest. From front to back, a clean, straight wound ran through her torso, pierced entirely by the 100-step flying sword. A normal person, even a high-ranking Shinigami, would collapse in agony. But not her. Her face, though pale, was filled with intoxicated joy, almost ecstatic. The pain didn't bother her. The blood didn't frighten her. Her focus was fully on the sword technique, Aiden's sword. She was completely immersed in it. Is that your sword style? She gently ran her fingers along the blood-covered wound on her chest. Aiden stood calmly nearby, raising a hand. With a loud clang, his Zanpakuto still glowing faintly with golden spiritual pressure returned to his palm. What do you think? He asked. Anohana didn't hesitate. Unrestrained. And all-encompassing. Aiden nodded slightly, then glanced at her wound. Do you want to keep going? I'm the captain of the 4th Division, Anohana said, her voice calm and clear, even as she activated Kaido on herself. You know what that means. But what you don't know is why I mastered healing in the first place. She placed her hand on her injury. A green glow formed, slowly closing the wound. I didn't learn Kaido for compassion or duty. I learned it to keep enjoying the thrill of battle. Injury, pain, fatigue. Those things dull the excitement. More importantly, I feared accidentally killing a worthy opponent. Before I could enjoy the fight to its fullest. As she spoke, the bloody gash sealed almost completely. Of course, only on the surface. Not even the strongest Kaido could instantly heal damage caused by Aiden's sword. Only Orihime Soten Kisshan could truly reverse such harm. Anohana knew that too. But for her, it wasn't about fully healing. It was about removing distractions. Pain, fatigue, blood loss. So the battle could continue. Is that so? That's a pity. Aiden smiled faintly. From here on out, your only concern should be whether Kaido can heal defeat. Anohana's lips curved into a faint smile. We'll see. Oh, and one more thing. Her eyes sparkled with an odd glint. I owe you an apology. The name Anohana Retsu is not my real name. That sword just now proved you're worthy of knowing who I really am. With a small bow, she said softly, nice to meet you again. I am Anohana Yachiru. Named for mastering every sword style in the Soul Society. Or maybe you'll know me better by this name. The first Kinpachi of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards. At that moment, Aizen, who had been quietly observing, finally understood. Every mystery made sense. Why did the captain of a medical squad have such terrifying swordsmanship? Why did she give off such bloodlust under the moonlight? Because she wasn't just any captain. She was the first Kinpachi. The founding captain of the 11th Division. Master of all sword styles? Aiden chuckled lightly. That's not quite true, Captain Anohana. You haven't mastered mine. That's why you're here tonight, right? Anohana's eyes burned with hunger, her fighting spirit rising like wildfire. You're a genius of Kendo, she said. Someone who could build a whole new school of swordsmanship. Let me see it. Show me more. Give me everything. Gone was the kind, healing angel. What stood now was a sword demon thirsting for violence. Ainso's. With that shout, she disappeared with a burst of flash steps. Her blade tore through the air, targeting Ain's neck with unstoppable speed. You want to please me? Ain narrowed his eyes. You really think you can? Just as Anohana's Zanpakuto was about to reach his neck, Ain did something shocking. Clang. He sheathed his sword. Aizen's eyes widened. Anohana, too, was momentarily confused. What are you doing? A Shinigami without a sword is like a tiger without claws. Or are you out of strength already? But her blade didn't slow down, slicing toward him with deadly pressure. Chapter 39, A sword is such an inconvenience. Anohana Yachiru's killing intent. If you can't please her, then you'll be cut down. If you can't satisfy her, then pay for it in blood. That was the murderous intent of Anohana Yachiru, laid bare after revealing her true self. Even when she saw Ain sheath his Zanpakuto mid-fight, there was no flicker of her usual mercy. No restraint. Only deeper dissatisfaction. No Shinigami had ever dared to abandon their sword in a duel with her. Not even the strongest Shinigami of the last millennium. Yamamoto Genryu's Ishigakuni. Would take such a risk. A sword is such an inconvenience. As though he could read the fury in her heart, Aon slowly raised his head and glanced at her. Clang. He extended both hands outward. His index and middle fingers touched. And a monstrous torrent of spiritual pressure erupted. Just as Anohana Yachiru's Zanpakuto came within a breath of slicing into his neck, the earth beneath her feet cracked apart. One after another, long swords surged from the ground. Each one uniquely shaped yet exuding the same chilling sword pressure. They rose like celestial bodies, surrounding him like stars orbiting the moon. Boom. Her blade, along with the crushing force it carried, was completely repelled. Isolated by the 8 floating swords of pure spiritual pressure. They formed a barrier no blade could cross. You really do wield a stronger sword. What is this? How can it be this powerful? When you're not even holding your Zanpakuto. Anohana's strike, launched with full force, failed to break through the defense. For a moment, shock paled her expression. But then, an intoxicating, mad gleam lit up her eyes. This was it. This was swordsmanship. A battle worthy of the name. A warrior worthy of her blade. This was the kind of opponent she had longed for. One who walked the ultimate path of the sword. The way of the sword, 8 swords soaring. Aon pushed his left hand through the air. The 8 swords, once passive shields, immediately shifted to an offensive formation. They glided through the night like celestial blades, each one radiating overwhelming sword pressure. With a storm-like force, the swords tore through the forest, turning trees to splinters and dust to a sky-filling cloud. Anohana's feet skidded backward under the sheer pressure emanating from the swords. Even before they struck. And then. 8 sword lights. 8 meteors. 8 death sentences. The night was slashed open, 8-fold. Clang. But Anohana didn't flinch. The reflexes honed through 1,000 life and death battles kicked in. Without hesitation, she reversed her grip and stabbed her Zanpakuto into the ground, anchoring herself. Right foot forward. Spine drawn taut like a bow. And then. Release. The way of the sword, 8,000 styles. Against the oncoming storm of spiritual blades, she advanced. Not retreated. Her kendo, forged over centuries, absorbed and surpassed every sword style in Soul Society. Her name, her legend, her pride. All poured into this one strike. Anohana's sword met the spiritual pressure blades head-on. Boom. The impact ripped the world apart. Trees shattered. Hills collapsed. Stone was sliced into dust. The ground caved in, forming a massive crater. Like a meteor had struck the earth. In its center, a pillar of spiraling spiritual light shot skyward, splitting the heavens. It was as if their clash had summoned dawn itself. Your swordsmanship is excellent, Anohana said coldly. But it pales in comparison to mine. You think your mere technique can overcome my 8,000 styles. Formed from the essence of all schools in the world? She gripped her sword with both hands, brimming with unshakable confidence, her presence that of a swordswoman looking down on all others. What a disappointment, Aon said softly. So this is all the vision the first Kenpachi possesses? Before she could respond, he raised his hand. Index and middle fingers extended once more. The 8 spiritual pressure swords, which had just been pushed back, blazed with light. Under Anohana's widening eyes, the swords merged. Forming one colossal sword of divine pressure, surrounded by countless sword lights. 8 become 1. Clang. With a thunderous roar, the massive blade of light crashed downward like a comet, engulfing both Anohana and her sword in a tide of incandescent force. Impossible. Anohana's mind blanked. Everything around her vanished in the blinding surge. Only one thing remained. A titanic blade that could split the heavens and shatter the stars. P.F. The sword tide roared across the landscape. In the aftermath, a gully stretching hundreds of meters was carved into the earth, obliterating everything in its path. Crack. A keto barrier shimmered into view. Meant to contain the battle. But it had long since fractured. Cracks spiderwebbed across it like broken glass before it finally shattered. At the end of the gully, a lone figure knelt. Bloodied. Torn. Anohana Yachiru, her Zanpakuto embedded in the ground, leaned on it like a cane. Her tightly braided hair had unraveled into a waterfall of silk. The white houri of the 4th Division had been shredded, falling like petals to her feet. Only a tattered Shyakusho clung to her form, blood soaking through her waist and abdomen. But she didn't care. Not for the wounds. Not for the ruined uniform. Not for defeat. All that remained in her mind was that sword. Her eyes were dazed. Obsessive. Ecstatic. Chapter 40, If anyone is worthy of a final battle, it's you. She was the first-generation Kenpachi Anohana Yachiru. A Shinigami who once claimed mastery over all the schools of swordsmanship in the world. For Anohana, there were only 2 things she found truly irresistible, battle and kendo. The technique Ian had just used was both a fight and a sword style. That's why it shook her to the core. It wasn't just a slash. It was a fusion of philosophy and combat, a sword of purest form. The pinnacle of kendo fused with the thrill of battle. This wasn't just any clash. This was the kind of fight she lived for. The kind that made her feel alive, even in defeat. That sword just now. 8 swords in one, Ian calmly said, answering the question she hadn't finished asking. 8 swords in one? Anohana Yachiru muttered, almost entranced by the words. Amazing, she whispered. With your own strength alone, you've surpassed the Yachiru. I've spent over 1,000 years perfecting. All the styles I've mastered, all the wisdom I've gathered, all compressed into a single stream. Beaten. She gently repeated the phrase again. 8 swords in one. As if tasting every syllable. After a moment, she slowly pushed herself up from her half-kneeling position, her body pierced, her spirit overwhelmed. But her face wore a serene smile. I must admit it. In terms of kendo, among all the Shinigami I've ever faced. There is no one better than you. Not even myself. Not even the Captain Commander. Anohana sighed deeply, but there was no regret. The slight curve of her lips revealed intoxicated joy. Even while bleeding, even in defeat. She was elated. Because this was the kind of sword fight she had waited a lifetime to experience. Ain't so's Anohana Yachiru. First Kenpachi. Acknowledge you as the strongest. She looked at him with eyes filled with both clarity and desire. Yes. The strongest. She had faced defeat before. Thousands of years ago, it was Genryu's Ishigakuni Yamamoto who beat her, which led to her stepping down and becoming the first captain of the 11th Division. Later, she fought the young Kenpachi Zaraki. And when he shattered her spirit in raw spiritual pressure, she gave up her title and name, becoming Anohana Retsu, the gentle captain of the 4th Division. But in none of those fights did she lose in swordsmanship. With Yamamoto, she lost to sheer power. The overwhelming heat and dominance of Rijinjaka. With Zaraki, she lost to his limitless spiritual pressure. The wild hunger of someone who had never known control. But in kendo? In the way of the sword? She had never been bested. Until now. Today, against Ian, she lost completely. Not just in strength or pressure. But in the path of the sword itself. Tonight, my kendo has chosen you. You now carry the title of strongest in the way of the sword. I am truly glad. Because in my defeat, I reached a new clarity. 10,000 swords returned to one. The strongest. Ian echoed softly, but there was no pride in his voice. Instead, his gaze drifted, deep in thought, focused not on the praise. But on the revelation he had just touched. 10,000 swords returned to one. A concept that had just bloomed in his mind. That title, strongest, meant little to him compared to a deeper understanding of the sword. Standing nearby, Aizen Sosuke smiled. He understood. For other Shinigami, being called Kenpachi would be the highest honor. But for Ian, the name didn't matter. To be the best in sword art, hand-to-hand combats, flash steps and Kido, spiritual pressure, and Zanpakuto. To be strongest in all 6 disciplines. That was his pursuit. And Aizen respected that deeply. What's wrong? Anohana asked. You don't seem happy. Would you be happy over something that was always a fact? Ian replied. Anohana fell silent, stunned. I see. So your ambition lies beyond the sword. No. Isn't limited by the sword at all. Now she understood. Ian didn't aim to be a master of just one path. He aimed to become a perfect hexagon, equally flawless in every core aspect of a Shinigami. Their eyes met, and the silence between them deepened. Anohana could feel it clearly. Ian's clarity, his composure, his quiet but unwavering ambition. That sword just now. It wasn't your limit, was it? She asked. I could feel it. There's something even greater behind it. It's a shame. Today has to end here. She looked up at the cracked Kido barrier above them. Dawn was breaking. Her expression was filled with regret. Not because she had lost. But because the fight couldn't continue. This kind of battle was more addictive than any drug. People would die, Anohana said calmly. For a Kenpachi, death is the final destination. To die seeing the highest peak of swordsmanship. There's no greater honor. But then, she shook her head slightly. Still. Now isn't the time. Her tone softened, yet there was an edge to it. This was the woman who once ruled the battlefield, whose blade brought death without mercy. And though centuries of peace had hidden that side. It was never truly gone. If needed, she could tear off that mask and return to being the demon from 1,000 years ago, ready to bathe the battlefield in blood once more. If that's your wish, Ian replied, I will fulfill it. You are the first Kenpachi. The strongest female Shinigami in history. If anyone is worthy of a final battle, it's you. He met her gaze without flinching. When the time comes, I'll be the one to escort you to the end. With my own sword. Anohana's eyes lit up. Not with love. But with a desire only someone like her could understand. The thirst for a perfect death. I look forward to it. She smiled. It was the smile of someone who had found peace in the promise of a worthy end. Ain't so's. One more thing. She turned to the man beside Anne. By rights, I should hand you the title of Kenpachi tonight. You beat me with the sword. That title should be yours now. But hundreds of years ago, someone else already took it from me. I never used Benkai that day, but the result was still defeat. So the name Kenpachi and the captaincy of Squad 11 no longer belong to me. I'm sorry. I can't give you those spoils. Her voice held a trace of guilt. Chapter 41. Flash Goddess indeed to defeat a Shinigami bearing the name Kenpachi, and to defeat the first-generation Kenpachi at that. According to the laws of Sairi Itai, the victor should inherit everything from the defeated. However, at this moment, Anohana Yachiru holds neither the title of Kenpachi nor the position of the 11th Division Captain. And so, the winner of tonight's battle ends up with nothing. It's fine. Maybe to you, the title of Kenpachi or being captain of Squad 11 is something noble and meaningful. But to me, it's nothing special. It's not even icing on the cake. So don't worry about it. If I really wanted it, I'd just take it. Ian chuckled lightly, his voice calm, yet filled with confidence that made one's heart tremble. Clearly, in his eyes, whether it was the name Kenpachi or the 11th Division itself, it was all just casual. Not taking it didn't mean he couldn't take it. It only meant he didn't want it. If it's you saying that, I suppose it makes sense. Anohana Yachiru didn't think Ian was being arrogant. In fact, it felt completely natural to her. I'll be there the day you graduate early and go challenge Hiroko Shinji of the 5th Division. She glanced at him, then paused, her voice calm as ever. Should I take that as a reward for defeating the first-generation Kenpachi in combat? Ian's interest was piqued. He raised an eyebrow slightly. According to what Shiba Ishin had told him, there were 3 ways to join the 13th Division of Imperial Guards. The third challenging and replacing a captain was especially rare. First, it required at least 200 witnesses from among the Shinigami students. That alone disqualified most people. Second, a captain wasn't just strong. They also held great power and political weight. And with Hiroko Shinji's personality. Clever, slippery, and always watching for angles. If Ian walked into the 5th Division alone, whether he won or lost, he might still be charged with something and labeled a criminal. There would be no way out except defection. Sure, Anohana nodded. Then I'll see you, she said softly. The only man in Soul Society who could ever truly satisfy me. Sosk. As the first light of dawn began to break, Anohana Yachiru turned to leave. She didn't care that she looked like a mess in front of Ian. But she had no intention of letting others see her like this. After all, even if she was no longer the 11th Division's captain, she still held the 4th Division's title. Some things still required dignity. She looked deeply at Ian one last time, as if she wanted to imprint his face. The only man in all of Soul Society who could excite her. Into the depths of her soul. Then she turned, and disappeared into the early morning fog. Aizen, what do you think? After watching Anohana leave, Ian withdrew his gaze and turned toward the man behind him. The water in Sairi Ai runs deeper than I thought. Aizen didn't hide his surprise. He admitted it openly. He wasn't ashamed that he'd misjudged the strength of Soul Society. After all, he was still just a student of the Shino Academy. He wasn't of noble birth, and he wasn't omniscient like Huck. So naturally, his evaluation of Sairi Ai's strength had to evolve in real time. Like tonight. After witnessing Anohana Yachiru's terrifying past and hidden power, his view had changed. Of course, there are powerful people within the 13th Division of Imperial Guards, Aizen said. But Sairi Ai is still what you'd describe. Corrupt, arrogant, stubborn, and outdated. They can't tolerate her. The 13th Division of Imperial Guards can't,